All right, here we go. We're hitting it. It says we're going live. You're live.
We're live?
So it says.
Wow, we're doing it. Here we are.
Here we are. Um, Hello, chat.
Yeah, I guess you're responsible for managing the chat. I'm like, I don't
Okay,
know what's going
that's
on out
fine.
there.
I'm happy to be chat dad.
Okay, perfect.
I've got the chat. I have my little Instagram DMs where people have asked questions.
Okay,
I think we're
sweet.
good. Do you want to update your cell phone? Absolutely. It's a terrible time for that. Okay. Hello, all. Um,
Yay.
I'm Hawk,
I'm
and
Shuly.
this is my good buddy. And we're here to, yeah, we're here because we love astrology and we love talking about horary astrology. Um, and we've just had a great time collectively, uh, thinking through like the divinatory implications of certain charts. And we just thought it would be, oh God, the captions for the word horary are going to be a horror show for this whole thing.
Oh yeah, what's reading us now?
Or just horror.
Horror. Horror.
Um, Drop the good ones in the chat, anybody who's watching. Hi, Eric. Um, yeah, so we just love talking about the divinatory aspect of astrology, and I think horary makes that so explicitly obvious because it is literally just divination. Yeah, Shirley, do you want to tell us what horary astrology is?
Yeah. So, okay, the way I think of horary astrology is it's sort of like if you think of, a tarot reading, for example, you have a random set of the cards, you shuffle them around, and then you pull whatever cards come up, right? And horary is a way of using astrology to do something similar. All of the planets are up there moving in the sky, and then the moment of your question, you sort of just look at how all the pieces have fallen. It's sort of like, the planets are dice that are always rolling, and when you have the question you just look and see like, oh, what do the dice show right now?
That's a great way to describe it. I love the idea of the sky just being like a shaking dice box that's just at any time you can just kind of peek in the window and be like,
Right,
what's going on?
right, you do like a screenshot of it and then you've got that, right?
Incredible. Okay, we love that. All right, let's see. Do I want to post this further? Let's see. I think I do. We're
I'll
gonna
share it on
say
Instagram if you do.
we're live. Yeah, get your live horary.
Get you live.
Get your live. I saw this person call themselves a bean monger, who serves coffee for a living.
Oh wow,
And I was thinking, what, like, are we star mongers?
I love that.
I know. Isn't that nice?
I
Fate
I was on
mongers?
the, what was it?
Fate mongers?
Oh yeah, okay, I could see that. Omen monger. I feel like omen.
Get your omens.
Come
Oh,
one, come all.
that's literally me. I'm thinking about the like bring out your dead guy from Monty Python.
Oh yeah, bring out your omens.
Okay, I want to see how I can. Okay, so yeah, I don't know if you want to start with yours. I think you have a good one. And then from there, I have one in the holster. And yeah, then we can just go from there.
That sounds great. Okay, should I share my
Okay.
screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
See how it looks.
awesome. Yeah. Let's see. Zoop. What's that look like?
It looks like a screen. Let's see what it looks like on. We need to bring back Astrologian. Yeah, so real.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, astrologian.
That's that's Eric. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Oh,
Somehow I
nice. It's
knew
like
I could just feel it.
fully. Oh, it looks good actually. I think it's pretty sweet. Okay, yeah, big chart. And then we're small in the corner. So I think
Good to
that seems
see.
fine.
I'm just reposting your Instagram story. Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah, are we ready to jump in?
I think so. Can everybody see this? Yes, probably. The reason I can't see it properly inside the YouTube window is because it's so freaking tiny on purpose so I can see the chat. Okay, great. It's freaking happening. Okay, tell us what we're looking at first of all. What are all these wheels just for the newly initiated that may be watching on replay or currently?
Oh yeah, okay, okay. So I mean,
We got to make sure
I
Eric knows what the bound wheel is.
yeah, so this is just like my standard Astro Gold setup. I didn't do anything special to it. I just literally opened it and cast the chart. So what we have here is like the center sort of like tan wheel has all of the planets placed in it with their little glyphs. And then all of the lines are the house cusps. I cast it in Placidus because that's what I usually use for horary astrology, which may be something we could talk about a little if you want. And then moving in from like the tan wheel where all the planets are, the first one is the bound wheel using the Egyptian bounds. And then the second is the decans, and then the larger division is the signs, the 12 signs. And then the division on the outside are the sidereal lunar stations, which is probably a lot to get into, but
Oh,
that's what's out
glad I
there.
asked because I actually didn't notice that.
Yeah, yeah. I actually have probably I think it's next month, maybe the month after. I'm a little lost in time right now, but I've got a little tutorial on integrating the sidereal lunar stations onto your tropical astrogold charts coming out.
Hell
So
yeah. And I think this is one of the coolest things you're doing right now, just to tell everyone who thinks that you're dope, who is watching this. Shuly is like mega deep diving on the lunar stations, like the houses of the moon. And like on her website, it's just this like gradually populating library of interesting takes and research and gnosis and personal experience with the lunar mansions. Super well rounded, super good. Um, yeah, just a little quick little hype. Okay. Okay, let's see. What is the question that we have here?
yeah, so I have oh, let me change it to a horary. I for some reason I'm very particular about that, even though
Yeah,
it doesn't change anything. It's got to say
you gotta get
horary.
that. Yeah.
The short question is, should I buy the car now? But I have the full question here. It's, should I just wait a couple of months to buy the car outright instead of trying to buy it sooner with financing? So it's like, do I buy the car now with financing, or do I buy the car later buying it outright?
Okay. And when
I
you told
guess
me about this one,
really,
I was like, this sounds hard, actually. Because a lot of horrors are like, will I like this guy? Like, are we gonna have a nice time together? And that's like, okay, clear significators. Basically, let's just begin from the very beginning. The most annoying fucking part, from my perspective, about doing horror astrology is assigning the significators. There's a lot of clear rules, but it's just a little bit. That's the part where I'm like, okay, now hang on, we have to go through this carefully. Like, I like start puzzling it out. Um, who is in charge of the significators? When you have a love question, it's like, okay, like the first house is you, the querent, and the seventh house is your would-be lover. And then we look at those guys. But this one's a little complicated. So let's take us through it, Julie.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I haven't really thought about this a ton. I cast the chart and just posted it up here, but
Yeah.
yeah, so traditionally, the querent, the person who's asking the question, is indicated by the ascendant, and especially the ruler of the ascendant, the planet that rules the ascendant, and the moon. And the moon is sort of like, I guess the way I think of it is the ascendant and the ruler of the ascendant is like the querent themselves, and the moon is like the question, which is sort of the same thing most of the time, but sometimes you can get a little bit more specific with it. And I think potentially could be relevant here.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, so the ruler of the ascendant here is Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. Um, and Jupiter has already set, so it's like it's the seventh sign, the seventh whole sign house, but Jupiter is cadent by like angle. It's already set below the descendant, and is retrograde. And that's always an interesting signification. Sorry, signature, I think, is when you have the ruler of the ascendant in the seventh house, or vice versa. It's like always a really interesting one. So we'll come back to that. And then yeah, the moon is in Aquarius. I think she's applying to the sun, right? Yeah, applying a trine to the sun. I'm always like zooming in, like
You know, my face is like so close to the screen. I'm like,
yeah, I know we both are like
yes, she
yeah,
is
she's applying a
applying
trine
to
to the
the
sun.
sun.
And one thing I really like about Astrogold is it gives you the moon's speed. And so here, very easily,
It
usually,
does.
yeah, if you click the moon, it'll tell you the speed.
Damn, been using that app for
Um,
like 4 years. We're
it's
all
it's
learning
been
so much.
it's a skill share, right? Um,
Exactly. It's a
yeah,
great
and the
way to
moon's
think
moving
about it.
really fast. She's moving over 14 degrees um today. So that's
Holy
like fast,
shit.
fast, fast,
She's zooming.
right? And then yeah, so with buying and selling or anything like that, the next place I always look is the second house, because the second house rules like possessions, movable
Okay.
possessions, I think is the usual definition people give for it.
Yeah.
So it's not like, your like estate is not second house because it's not a movable possession, but like your wallet, your keys, your car, like all of those things would be pretty second housey.
Yeah. I was talking
Um,
to Eric last night and he said anything that's not nailed down. I
yeah, I like that.
thought that was good.
Yeah, that feels right for me. And then, yeah, so here we have the moon in the second quadrant house. She's in the third sign, but the second quadrant house. So, to me, I'm like, as I'm working through this in my head, I'm immediately going to like, okay, so, I think I would judge the moon as being sort of the key significator for the topic of this car. I don't know. What do you think? What's your judgment there?
I think that sounds good in theory. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm reposting an Instagram link because Casanti
Oh,
told me
sorry.
it's broken. So
I'm
I'm a
like
little
putting you on the
bit not
spot.
following, but I feel like no, I am following, but I'm also my brain's not like switched on enough to give an opinion. But yeah, it's definitely she's in the second. She's fast moving, which I don't know, it's just giving car vibes.
Right? That seems good for a car. Um,
Um, yeah, no, I think so. But also, so let me ask you why her but not Saturn, just as a matter of interest.
yeah, so that like honestly, I'm sitting here trying to judge between the two.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like you can make an argument for both. So, for people who are listening to this later or anyone in the chat, like one of the questions you have is when you come into this is do we prioritize planets in houses as related to the topic, or do we prioritize the rulers of the house as related to the topic? And I tend to go towards planets in houses as a whole. What William Lilly would say is you should calculate the essential and accidental dignities of each of those and see like which one is stronger. And I mean, I would do that if it were like a tie, but to me, I feel like if the moon, like if we're asking a second house question and the moon is in the second house, then I'm like, I think I'm going to select that as my significator because the moon is
right.
also the significator of like questions.
Yeah, she's like
Um,
already involved.
Right, right. And I do think that Saturn will be a part of this judgment. I mean, there's an interesting sort of thing there with the aversion. I can never remember all the modern names for all the different aversions, but having Saturn like 30 degrees, is that like a demisextile? That what people call it? I don't know. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of this, but I do think it's always really interesting when you see planets like within a degree. I guess it's not a full degree, it's over a degree, but like within a degree or so of aversion to each other. So it's like Saturn and the moon are like almost the maximum amount of invisible to one another. They can see each other almost the least amount possible.
Yes, exactly. Like they're fully in the peripheral vision of each other.
Right, right. And yeah, I could see that being relevant to our question for sure. It looks
Okay, so
like
on the basis of the moon has the zoomies and therefore would be a car, and
mhm.
on the basis of William Lilly's principles,
Right. A
which
little bit
that's
of
what you
both.
want to see. You want to see like vibes-based astrology and like historical grounding and sources like in perfect harmony. It's so nice.
Yeah, and I feel like that horary is really good for that because
It is.
it's like the the math part of the chart can only take you so far, and then eventually it's like it really is like omenology. I mean, with natal astrology, you can just do the math and be done. Like you don't have to go all the way into the symbol element of it. But with horary, I feel like you can't stop at the math, or you will not be able to derive an answer to your question. That's what I think.
So real. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we're so like bothly drawn to it.
Mhm. Yeah, and then so in general, we would say, yeah, so there's in this type of question, there is the querent, who is the buyer in this case. There is the object, which is being purchased. And then there's also the seller. And I think I've been thinking about this as we kind of talk through. This is usually how I approach a horary question. It's like I start talking through the assigning the significators. And then as you go through assigning the significators, it starts to come forward the way that you might answer the specific question, especially when you get like a weirder question like this.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe we should talk about this question in terms of like a first house, seventh house, like buyer seller kind of relation, because I think something inherent to this type of question is like, well, if you wait on buying a car, then the specific car under consideration will probably sell, right? Like if we're talking about, whether you buy the car now or you wait months to buy it,
Right.
that car that you have in your mind will probably sell. So it's kind of a question of, do I buy this car now or do I buy another car later?
So that's a good way to approach it. And does the querent have a car in mind? Or is it purely
Yeah.
hypothetical? Oh, okay. So that totally changes the vibe.
Yeah.
It's
So it's
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 the
kind of
question is truly like, do I buy this car or do I
right.
wait?
Right. So, yeah.
Ooh,
So
this is fun. Wait, can I just jump in really quick?
yeah,
So
please.
I think in job questions, at least the way that I learned it, I studied astrology with Adam Ellenboss, who is in the Frawley School. John Frawley is his teacher, and which is very different than the like Lily's slipstream of horary. But I'm learning a little bit more about Lily every day. Thanks in part to Shuly, one of Lily's greatest living evangelists, I believe. We just gotta hype it up, I feel. And okay, so in the way that I learned horror, it's like your job is the 10th house, and then like your next job is the 11th house. If it's like a work question like that. So I'm kind of feeling like if it's this kind of question, it's like the car is the second house, and as we were saying, like the moon, and then the next car could be Saturn. You know what I mean? Because it's that
Ooh.
L2 and it's in the third. Do you know what I mean? It's like in the future place.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I have never used that technique when you like have multiple options before, but I'm actually going to hold on to that because that's a really good technique. And I feel like I get a lot of these questions of like, should I do this, 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 or this? And I'm like,
You're like, well, that's too many things.
yeah. Yeah, okay, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, so it
Um,
could either be Saturn or it could be like Jupiter because it's the L3, but I don't feel like we necessarily need to complicate matters. We could just settle on Saturn.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of like, okay, so there's, basically in this question, there's two significators that would be really obvious indicators of the car. And we're picking one that is a little more prominent. And the way that the moon is prominent also in this circumstance is like it's prominent now because it is placed in the second house. Um, in a month, if you ask a horary question with Sagittarius rising, the moon will, well, I guess not a month, in 3 weeks, let's say, the moon will be in a different place in the chart, but Saturn will still be, I know, right? I said a month, right?
The one time that the moon will
The
not be
one
in a different
time.
place.
But you know what I'm saying? Like the moon
Yeah.
will be no longer in the second house during Sagittarius rising, like in 2 days. But Saturn will be the ruler of the second house for a Sagittarius rising chart for, the rest of the year. So I like that. I think that's an interesting approach. And yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
And
And that's
yeah,
convenient, I think, for our purposes.
yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is looking at the dynamics between like buyer and seller. So like maybe it would help if I expanded a little bit on this
Yeah, let's do
question
it.
because it's my girlfriend's asking the question. So I've got a lot of background details about it. And
Fantastic.
yeah, so her situation is that she had a very old kind of like clunker car that died, and she waited a while, did a ton of research, and found the exact type of car she wanted, bought that new car, and then immediately got in a like collision, which was not her fault, that totaled
Obviously.
the new car that she bought. She really, really likes that type of car, and so she wants to buy another one of that specific type of car.
Okay,
Um,
that makes sense.
right. And so, in a way, it's like the question of should I buy the car now or later is about should I buy this specific type of car now or later? But right now, there is a car that fits all of her needs and is this specific make and model and year and all this that she really likes available in like the next town north of here. Whereas if she waited later, it might not be available somewhere locally. I mean, we live in the desert, like not really around a lot of large cities, so there's not a lot of sort of stock to look for. So having
Right.
to travel to a neighboring state would be something that might be a need if the specific one isn't the one that we buy. But
And
you know,
was there a money component that kind of half recall? Was there like a component of like financing?
right. So, where she's at right now is she's in a position where she could, put down a down payment on the new car, but would still need some financing for it. But if she
Okay.
waited just maybe 4 or 5 months, she probably could buy the car outright with no financing. So part of her question is also like, should I buy the car right now? Meaning that I will have to, enter into a contract and have a car payment and all of that, or should I save my money and wait and then purchase the car like with cash outright.
Okay,
Does
so
that
this
make
is a
sense?
thing that happens to me a lot in horror where I'm like, I have an opinion that's not astrological.
Well, I'm
Um,
curious, what is your non-astrological opinion?
I'm gonna wait, I think, to share it until the situation unfolds a little bit because I just feel like it's not a strong opinion and it's not really that relevant. But actually, like as far as like I know that paying off a loan early can affect your credit score negatively,
Right,
and so it's like you can't just be in debt for 6 months possibly and then get out of debt. It's like they make you do it over the lease term potentially, but
right,
I'm not totally that sure about that. And the other factor is that the way that interest works, it's like you're ultimately just paying so much more. It's not just that you're in debt. It's like that like they're going to actually increase the overall cost of the car. So
right,
so the question becomes, and this may not actually be the question that she's asking. She may be like, will this car be better enough to go for it? Which actually makes total tons of sense. But it's like the question for me underlyingly feels like it would be in my own position, it would be like, is this worth increasing the overall cost of the car? Because that's functionally what a car payment does.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a great point, and I think you're actually pretty in line with her question here because it's sort of like, well, if she doesn't have a car for all of those months, then she's gonna have to deal with sharing cars with other people and bumming rides and all of that, which is an added annoyance. But also, as you said, even if she got a good interest rate, she would either have to take a hit on her credit um, or pay a lot more money for the car
Totally.
in the long run. And no, again, like kind of knowing her because I am pretty close to the situation, she would definitely pay the car off in like a few months and just take the hit to her credit.
Well, yeah, I mean, that seems like it might just be worth it anyway on the face of it. Okay, so that's worth exploring usually, like with querents, to just be like, okay, like where is the motivation exactly?
Mhm.
And I feel like we've got it. So it really does come down to like a which one of these, like what's the vibe?
Mhm.
Is it this one or this one? Is the vibe better for this one or this one?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because it's not exactly
Um,
about price. It's not exactly about like the quality of the car. It's kind of an overall like quality of life overall question.
right.
So that to me
Right.
speaks to like the relationship between the querent and the car. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I think so. Yeah. And so here we've got an interesting uh let's see. So the the sun and Jupiter are within orb of a trine with each other. So like I always get stuck on this one sometimes. So it's not the moon will complete the aspect with let me just move forward a little. I'm basically trying to
Yeah,
see like is the moon's aspect to Jupiter being obstructed by the sun or being like supported by the sun? Because the moon is applying directly to the sun,
right.
and will aspect the sun before aspecting Jupiter, I think. But let me double check about that because I think that's actually relevant. Oh God. I just like do
So
not have that set up at all.
yeah, that's fair.
Um,
So you have to. Oh yeah, no, I think you're good. But you might change it to hour instead of day. There we
yeah.
go.
20. Wow, because the sun and Jupiter are getting really close together also.
True, true, true.
Yeah, I think that oh, it's so close when they come together though. That's crazy.
Yeah, like is that even an obstruction, or are they just in like a mutual situation?
I know, right? Let me think about that
So
one.
ultimately, that shakes out to a what the modern astrologers would call a grand air trine.
Right. Right.
So this
Or
is a
like, is
place
this
where
a
the
good
vibes and
one
the
or a bad one?
yeah, those vibes and the technicality conflict on this front. Because it's like, okay, well, we have like the whole all everyone who's in an air sign is like harmonizing in a Jupiterian way, but also just technically, the sun
Right.
obstructs the trine to Jupiter.
Right. Yeah, but I think in this situation, it's like, I mean, it maybe doesn't matter that the sun is obstructing the tri like because I think that the sun
Oh
being
shit, the
slower
sun is the
moving.
eighth house, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So that's like the debt. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
the eighth house is the loan. So it's like here's a
Mm-hmm.
situation where querent, car, and the loan are just in apparent harmony
Mm-hmm.
in terms of their
Yeah.
Jupiterian like aspect. So then I think we'd want to probably look at the reception also is obviously,
Right.
but
Right. Yeah.
what do you
So
think? Is that do you have an extra take about that?
no, I mean that's basically where I was going next was like, I wanted to
Hell yeah.
see how the aspects would complete with each other. And it seems like Jupiter and the moon or the moon will complete her aspect to Jupiter relatively unimpeded. I mean, and it kind of actually fits the symbolism of the loan of her being like, well, I'm probably going to receive a bit of a penalty in my credit score for paying the loan off early, but I'll just pay the loan off early anyway.
Fuck yeah. Like
Because
we're
I
not
mean,
gonna
like, what do
get
you need a credit
compounded
score
interest.
for,
Like fuck
right?
off.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
You need a credit score to buy cars. Like, she's already bought a car. What does she need a credit score for, right?
You can't get me.
Right? But in a way, it's like I do kind of see that. It's like and it would be there's something in that like trine of it all that speaks to the convenience. But yeah, like let's look at the reception a little bit. So
Good.
Jupiter is in there's like I don't know, not super strong reception. Jupiter is in Gemini, so Jupiter is in its sign of, detriment, or I really like using exile for the opposite sign to their domicile.
That's my
And
favorite
then,
word too.
yeah,
It's
because it just,
just so much more evocative.
right, detriment, you're like, I don't, what does that mean? Are we doing math? Like, and
I've
then,
heard like arguments that it's not like quote unquote technically correct for the translation, and I'm
right,
like, I fear that I don't care. It's like way
yeah,
cooler.
same.
Like anybody who is like up on Hellenistic astrology enough to know what I'm talking about, like probably is aware of that fact. That it's and so therefore it's like no harm, no foul. I'm calling it exile.
Right.
Like
And
we're
it's like
having a fun
so
time.
it's so like legible, I feel. Like, doesn't it get
Exactly.
points for legibility?
I think
Yeah, but
so.
so I'm like the sun and the moon are actually both in the bound of Jupiter here.
Yeah,
So
so true.
so Jupiter sees them favorably. I know Frawley has a kind of unique take on reception.
Probably does have a unique take on reception. It's interesting. It's like it's different. I'm gonna wait a little bit to get into it because it's like confusing and I don't want to do it with bounds because it's like already a little bit hard for my brain to keep track of.
Very real.
Um,
Um,
yeah, but it is a weird like upside down way to think about it. So we'll circle back to that. But I'm into that because it's like they're both planets are in, I think of dignity in a way as being like, who are you in service to? Um,
mm,
and both these planets are in service to your partner, which is like your girlfriend is like is Jupiter, and everybody is at least in some way, there's a lot of other players involved, but in some way, like they're all interested in Jupiter. They're like, yeah, we're here for you. That's like why we're here in this spot is it's about you.
right. And I guess the way that like my sort of like Lily informed brain would describe this is it's like they have like weak but positive or Jupiter has like a weakly positive attitude towards both of these things, which actually feels like it represents reality pretty well. Like that's pretty radical. Like she likes the car, but it's not the perfect car, but it's it fits all of her requirements and it's nearby and convenient. She doesn't like the idea of entering into a loan, but is in a position where she could pay it off early, and it doesn't really matter that she would take the hit to her credit score and like um
Totally. And I think the other thing that we see here really clearly is, well, okay, hang on. I'm having a thought.
yeah.
The other car, not to move ahead, the other car is face bound and sign dignity.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Because I mean, aside from
So
all of this, one of the
just
things I wanted to return to is like Jupiter's not in great shape right here.
no, which makes sense. It's like she's not like she got in a car wreck and
No.
her car got totaled. That's a shitty circumstance to begin with. And then secondarily, it's like nobody fucking likes having to make a purchase like this under duress. It's unfortunate. It's fucking annoying. Driving to visit them requires the assistance of somebody else. Like it's 100% XL Jupiter in the sixth.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, Jupiter is angular by sign here, but very much has set into the sixth. And
Mm,
so like,
struggle zone.
this is Jupiter is falling. And I think that that describes her position in a lot of ways with regard to this. It's like Jupiter's retrograde also. I mean, we haven't talked about the retrogradation, but one thing that I think is potentially relevant is William Lilly has this great aphorism about how I think it's Lily. I'm worried I'm quoting the wrong aphorism, but I'm not going to go find it, so I'm just going to go with it. Um, that a planet that is retrograde is like a person in their sick bed. And
Ooh,
she's actually
I
been
mean,
pretty sick
real.
lately, like been dealing with, some health stuff amidst all of this. And so I do wonder if like, is it the kind of situation where you have two yeses here? Like, neither of these situations, like the car now with financing or the car later, neither of them are necessarily bad. I'm
Right. It's like
seeing, some pretty
they're
yesy
both
things.
frustrating in a way as represented by her current situation.
Right. And if we want to talk about the Saturn for the other car, you've got Saturn retrograde in the third house. And I think Saturn is like also moving extremely slowly while retrograde.
Right. Which makes fucking
Um,
sense because it's like about waiting for 4 months to get this one.
Right. And
So
Saturn in
real.
the third house is like you can't run your little errands whenever you want. You can't just like, go to the store. You
Oh,
can't go
I
out
love
to hang out with your
that.
friends.
I love that his retrograde and slow as fuck presence in the house, in that house, like is symbolizing the delays, like just the annoying ass reality, the molassesy slow reality of having there's now extra logistical steps to everything you might want to do. And this part's kind of cute in a way where it's like Saturn is just being held in this triple dignity in the third. I know that she lives with you and Eli and therefore is like you know what I mean? It's like literally like okay, like actually it's annoying. It's Saturn, it's retrograde, it's slow as shit, but like you have it's like it's actually fine in terms of like how well it works for Jupiter.
Yeah, and I mean, that we're like, without telling my whole like life story here, like the car that she's sharing is the car that Eli and I own. So like there is another car in the
Oh,
household. There's another, there are hindrances to her sharing the car, and the car is very Saturn in Pisces right now. Like it's got a little damage. It's very old and it's small and cramped and kind of uncomfortable to drive, especially for her. But
yes.
it is okay. Like,
Well, and I like the idea too that it's like it's kind of like it's being held in the interest of Jupiter, like it's in this triple dignity for Jupiter.
Mhm.
And the way that, but it's like, but it still puts Saturn in the third, like in the house of roommates, in the house of errands. It like inconveniences your situation, and it does put additional strain on this resource that already exists, that already is being shared by two people. So that makes a lot of sense. I think what we would do ultimately if we were asked this question by somebody we would somebody who's not your girlfriend is obviously going to get the full info dump is we would like just present these options, and I think that summary would look like from me like it will, as I'm sure you have considered, like put additional strain on the resource of the group, but there is something overall harmonious about it for you to wait. And also, the one that you're thinking of right now seems pretty fine.
Right,
Like,
right. Right. And I think that's a fun way to approach divination. And well, I'm saying fun. And a valuable way to approach divination is sometimes people are looking for an answer, but also sometimes people are looking more for like an overview of, what is the lay of the land and
those are my
divinatory
favorite ones.
perspective,
I
right?
love the narrative building, like the narrative astrology. It's just so sick.
And I feel like in this circumstance, like if, put the our relationship aside, if she were a querent who was sending me this question like in an email and I was answering it, I think that's basically what I would say is like you've got the two options, neither of them are particularly bad. At the end of the day, you really just have to pick between these two situations. But it does seem like the like the longer term, waiting, saving money, and then buying a car later, might have a little bit less like hassle associated with it. Because another thing I was thinking about here is so Saturn is able to see the ascendant and able to see Jupiter. I mean, by a square. So it's not a great aspect, but Saturn is able to see those places, and the Sun and Saturn do not see each other. So that third
Makes
party
sense.
of like the
No debt.
financer, all of that bullshit that you have to deal with, all the paperwork and all of that would just be something that wouldn't be on the table. You could just go directly to your goal. And so it's really like a question of like, do you want the thing that will be ultimately like the easiest in the short term and the more difficult in the long term, buying the car now with financing and dealing with all of the financing bullshit? Or would you prefer to take the route that is harder in the short term, but more rewarding in the long term of saving up
100%.
your money and buying the car later?
And yeah, that makes total sense to me. And now I think we could talk about the Frawley and dignity
Sure.
switcheroo. So like the way that he frames this is like we're going to talk about the Saturn because it's like it's all the same. It's Jupiter all the way down. I found this hard to metabolize because it's the opposite normally, where it's like you're wondering how a planet feels. So it's like we want to know how Saturn feels. But for Frawley, he's like, we want to know how the like Lord of the place regards the planet. Um, so like the kind of working metaphor that I was using in my brain, and this only works for if the situation is bad, is like you know how in Inception, people are in the dreams of other people, or there's inside a dream, and then the beings who populate the dream world sometimes realize that you, the dreamer, are here and like you're out of place and you shouldn't be here. So I think about when like Mars is in Cancer, and don't take this natally, to the audience, but when Mars is in Cancer and Horary, I think about it like this: like Mars is walking around this environment where like the local culture of the moon is like, fuck this guy, basically.
Hmm.
So we think about it like the moon actually feels like shit about Mars. Um, which is interesting when we think about it here. Because like normally you would say, okay, well, Mars feels bad because he's in the realm of the moon. But the reason he feels bad is because he's in a location that is hostile to him, as it
I
were.
see.
Again, not natally, but necessarily. It's not as good of a framework to use in natal astrology. But in Saturn's case, he is in an environment where like Jupiter, like the reception here is he's walking around in this place and there's just posters on every wall about how fucking great Jupiter is. Doesn't matter who he talks to. The king loves
Hmm.
Jupiter. You know, the shopkeepers love Jupiter. The random guys on the street also love Jupiter. Like this Saturn is in a place where everyone's like, we fucking love the square end. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
And that is not the
Um,
situation with the moon. The moon is like the shopkeeper, the people on the street love Jupiter. Shopkeeper feels fine. The merchant class feels fine. Like, you know, I'm using a very like capitalistic structure to describe this, but
yeah, I
or
really
rather I
like
should say
that. And
feudalistic. I'm using a feudal structure.
and it kind of like you can expand a lot on the um square there too, I think, right? If you approach it in that way. It's like because Lily has a thing about, if there's no connection, then the thing won't happen. If there's a square, then the thing will happen, but with like a lot of tension. And if it's an opposition, the thing will happen, but you would really wish it wouldn't have happened. And so, right. So I
Yeah,
feel like that is actually pretty good here, right? Of like, it will
it
come to
does.
pass, but with a lot of effort, and like, just challenge.
I'm almost like, is there a secret third option whereby the third house community like um allows her to circumvent the loan by way of like a community loan.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just because
That's a good
Jupiter is
question.
like the Jupiter dignity is just so fucking strong and it's all third housey and it's just kind of like, okay, like what if every friend or family member threw like $300 in that she pays back,
Hmm.
but she's, you know what I mean? There's just like so much Jupiterian style support here.
I love that that's like your antidote to the feudal metaphor also. Like
This mutual
what if we did like
aid.
a mutual aid?
I mean, that is our current antidote to the feudalist society we live in, I guess. You're right.
Right.
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean
But you know
that's
what I
a
mean? It's like it would be slower
yeah.
and it would be a lot more like there'd be more owing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because when you owe shit to the bank, it's just kind of like, "Ah, fuck it, your face does not give a shit." It's less emotionally like owe but
Right.
I don't
When
know.
when it's like your mom, you're like,
Yeah, it's like you're like, oh damn, like this is a little bit like this is getting me in the heart. I just wonder if there's a secret third option. You know what I mean? Because then it's like it doesn't it would still like weigh on the system as a whole. But I really think of when I see Saturn in Pisces, it's like I think about the like Indra's network of like all
mhm.
connected being, and then Saturn is like a marble that's like placed on it and it's like distending the structure. But when it's spread out, it's not going like it's like kind of going like whoa.
I love that.
So
and
like
and
maybe
I think
that's
this
a
is
way
a
to
really good
mitigate
example.
the third
Sorry.
house weight.
Yeah. I love that. And I think this is a really good example of the ways that you can use horary with clients as a problem solving approach. Because, I mean, that's what
Yes,
we're looking for here, right? Like, I think this querent would be better served with something that was a little bit more like laying out the options and seeking some like problem solving, giving them
totally.
tools for solving their problem versus an answer that's like, save up and wait. And just
Yeah,
like once
exactly.
everything's done.
But like
Some
I
some
might feel
querents
better
want
as a
that.
diviner if I can like pull a rabbit out of the hat and be like, this is the answer. But
Right.
and it's easy not to give into that temptation in a should I do A or B? Because it's like, this is an easy one not to do that. But I do find that I'm drawn in to that desire sometimes where it's just like, ooh, like I want to be the wizard who told you the truth. You know what I
Right.
mean? When really
Right.
actually it would have just been more helpful to like talk it out with some like helpful divinatory tools in front of us.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we've pretty much arrived at our answer here, but one other consideration that I wanted to bring up here was the fact of Jupiter's retrograde motion, because having the planet indicating the querent being retrograde, and having a question where the answer is, do I act fast or do I act slow? Um, you are slow right now. So that's like one challenge of like, if you want to act fast, it's going to be really hard to get that Jupiter going to do a fast action. I mean, Jupiter already doesn't move very fast and now is moving like slowly retrograde. So there's maybe some like putting like a little temperament element into analyzing the reception. Like, Jupiter's temperament is not really one of like quick and fast action right now. Jupiter's kind of
Mm.
like taking a step back, retracing their steps, like that kind of thing, which
I
is
think that's
also kind of
so
what my planet's
cool.
doing, right?
Because that like really like brings in this like bringing in the temperament is so cool because it's like it makes me think of this question like is it useful to do things when it comes to temperament, like does one want to, is it wise to do things that are actually contradictory to one's own temperament, and can that show up
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
horror? Like because it's like okay, yeah, you intellectually prefer to go fast, makes sense, Jupiter and Gemini
Hmm.
here, but
Hmm.
but is it, it kind of reminds me on like walking on a sore knee or something. It's like you're actually not ultimately going to get where you're trying to go any faster. Um,
Right, right. And like maybe Jupiter has other things to focus on right now that are not moving quickly on car buying,
real, yeah, so
right? Like
true. Like he's
in
busy.
the retracing, and maybe that's a situation too where like so imagine we have this exact same question, but the indicator for the car to buy right now was really good and the indicator for buying the car later was really bad, and then it's
Yeah,
like, okay, well maybe you just need to figure out how to go against your temperament and rally your resources to get that like quick thing. But in this
totally.
situation it's like, I don't know, you
Yeah,
could
right.
you could not.
Both of them are like, both the cars are like, there's no incredible essential dignity one way or the other. Like the
Right,
essence of each car is big shrug emoji,
right,
which,
right.
one might be tempted to think, okay, both cars are going to be mid. But my response to that is just that the Oracle might be saying, don't think about it. It's not relevant. The question is about you and like
Mhm.
how you are, what you need to be doing right now.
And in some ways, maybe that is part of her answer is like, she is looking at kind of like a mid car, like not like the worst car in existence that's, going to break down every day, but also, she's not looking at a new car. She's wanting to buy a
Right.
used car, a couple years old, that kind of thing. Like, I feel like both of these cars are kind of giving like, yeah, it's like a pretty good used car.
I feel like I would be like, the next step to me is to talk to the people you live with and be like, how do you feel about the use? How do you feel about the Saturn of it all if I go with the
Hmm.
Saturn option? And to really like
Hmm.
feel that side out.
And that's kind of funny because, yeah, Eli, who is her roommate, who is one of the owners of the car, is strongly advocating for her to wait and buy the car later, actually. Eli's like, we'll share a car. Who cares? Like, it's fine. We're making it work. We've actually been sharing a car since August. Like, so, I don't know, it's fine. So
Totally.
I think I kind of I went into this one already feeling, because I'm pretty involved in the situation, that she would be better served by saving her money and then buying the car outright. But I'm happy to see
I
that I think I see this in the horror too.
Yeah, I think so too. I started where you are, and then when we started talking about the trine, I was like, okay, it's actually good." And then I saw the triple stacked in Jupiter's signs, like Saturn thing. And I'm like, all right, well, that's pretty like objectively better. Like I think it could be, yeah, anyway. And there are ways to accumulate money from the group that doesn't involve going into debt, which would also take a long time, but might take some of the burden. Yeah, I mean, if you ask me how does everyone involved in the situation feel about the Saturn option, it's like everyone is like, go, you're a girlfriend.
Right, right.
Like there's no like hesitation in the support, I feel.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and like to be honest, I think I had one more thing. Oh yeah, I think there's maybe something like, you know, we've got Mars. We didn't really talk about Mars, but Mars is pretty like afflicted in the seventh house. We've got a nasty little troublemaker there. And if the seventh house is, traditionally in first house, seventh house elections regarding, or sorry, horary questions regarding buying and selling, the seventh house is usually the seller and the first house is the buyer. So like also that might be a component of this. Is there like some nefarious little troublemaker involved in the situation? I mean, I'm hesitant to go too deep into that because the same kind of reception we're talking about is present there too. Like Mars is also in Jupiter's bound right now.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't
I
know. That's
mean,
just like another element of it. If she waits a little while, maybe there will be other cars for sale that are also convenient to get to. Like there's all kinds of unknowns
I
that,
think also there's this element where it could be like, maybe it's not the worst thing that you're kind of like not driving as frequently right now. If you just had like a scary car crash, like maybe chill. Like, you're in the sixth house, like recover.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I feel like we've got a really good answer for this
Hell
querent.
yeah. And
Luckily she's sitting across the room listening, so I think we're pretty good.
hi.
But
Okay, I have one that is from my own practice that's about me,
I'm
which
gonna
I
stop
think,
sharing. Is that good?
okay, great. I think, yeah, please do.
Okay.
Okay, hello, we're big again. Please also note my cute ass pumpkin, everyone. I carved that myself. I am practically
Beauty.
Michelangelo. Okay. I think that your question about like where you were like, is there some kind of nefarious little gremlin in the seventh house? Like this ties into my chart from the other day. Um, I have a take about it, but I wouldn't mind going through it because I want the answer to be one thing,
Mm.
and I have decided that it should be
Hmm.
based on my will and desire.
Which is
Um,
a huge challenge with horary, right? Like when you're asking your own horary question, like
oh my God,
how
it's
can,
such a fucking
how
nightmare.
neutral can you really be?
It's literally such a fucking nightmare. Okay. So we can talk about that. And this is very much a question. And one thing you mentioned earlier was the two schools of thought around who how much we care if planet in house. Like, is it the Lord or is it the guy in the house? So
Hmm.
if anybody's just tuning in, the question is like, do you take the Lord of the seventh house to talk about the other guy, or is it the planet in the seventh house to talk about the other guy? Okay, so we have a chart that I think is just gonna do the best job dealing with this. So I'm gonna share this for now skis, but I'm gonna transition to Astrogold because I just didn't have it. This is just a screenshot, and I think it's nice to have
Whoa.
some more shit going on. What made you say whoa?
That opposition, just like I
Yeah.
had glanced at this
Okay.
chart before, but I didn't actually realize that it's like, oh no, like they're both like at 19 degrees and the moon is literally applying to complete that opposition. Okay. Whoa.
It's not audio, is it? Okay. Portland, Oregon. Let's get my sorting right so we don't freak out the the sorting daemons. Horary. Okay. Are we in the right house system? I use Regiomontanus. because my teacher told me to. And that's how I make, frankly, a lot of my decisions.
That's honest. That's
It's
called
just like,
lineage.
it's exactly. And it's so chill because it's like there's so many things where I feel like it's a little bit arbitrary. Like, do you use true node or mean node? Like, I used true node
Me
because I
too.
think that's what my teacher told me to do. Here we
Me
are.
too. Yep.
I like if you cultivate skill at like selecting, if you use your discernment, all of your discernment energy goes into selecting people whose judgment you trust, you can like let them make a lot of these micro decisions for you until such a time as you actually decide you have personal stake in them. It won't like stop you from going forward. I'm not saying you like anyway, yeah. Obviously, I'm not saying that you should be like, well, I actually think differently, but I'm gonna do what my teacher told me to. If you develop your Eric says I defied my lineage and went whole sign, many such cases. We can all thank Chris Brennan for that, honestly,
Yeah.
in one way or another. Oh,
I mean, I feel like there's a whole thing about,
Eric Blame's reading Solomon Isher.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like there's a whole thing with whole sign horary. I'm open to it.
Yeah, I God, it doesn't work for me, and I'll tell you why. I won't tell you why it doesn't work because that's the divine mystery. It can only they can answer that. But like the reason I don't fuck with it, and this is I have to cite Chris and Austin, like Chris Brown and Austin Kovic on this because they gave a really fucking awesome talk about at Norwalk one year about the way that whole sign and quadrant based houses like Placidus Reggio, all this other stuff, interface with each other and where their strengths and weaknesses were, which I thought was really cool because up until this point, all I knew from the Chris Brennan camp was whole sign houses are the best fucking house system ever. Like, suck my dick.
Right.
Like, I obviously didn't say that, not a direct quote. But yeah, so I was like, oh, cool. Actually, there's more nuance to this, and you believe there's more nuance to this. This was many years ago. Okay, so they're like whole sign houses provides a bird's eye view, which is like why it's so sick for natal. And I found this to be so true, totally sick for natal. It's literally the top down approach to the life, right? Because quadrant based houses are mapped like the the way that the lines of the houses are laid out, instead of being this regular, uniform, solar, like, like, oh, it's like we're like resonating with this like unified frequency. It's messy. And it's messy because the lines and where they go are being defined by, in one case, like defined by your location on the face of the earth, right? Or like what angle you are to the ecliptic on the earth. And that shit is like literally like, okay, these questions are for people who are being affected by their proximity to material reality. If I want to
Mhm.
find my lost wallet, I don't want the bird's eye view of my entire lifetime. That's not helpful. I need like the earth, the time space continuum as it intersects with right fucking now to be involved in that question. Like I need to know where it is right now.
I 100% agree. I couldn't have said it better. I mean, I use usually quadrant houses. I prefer Placidus, but I mean, I use Regiomontanus sometimes as well for things that have to do with, yeah, like for horary questions, inceptions, elections, that kind of thing that are very much like of this like moment that I am inhabiting. And I prefer whole sign houses for nativities. And I mean, I can use a little bit of both, like, but yeah, I prefer whole sign houses for nativities.
It's even made me like bump, like just pop them up inside the context of natal astrology because I'm like, oh, actually, this is sick. Like sometimes I'm just like,
Yeah.
I want to get a little down and dirty in these karmic circumstances. Like we don't need to be so up here. Like I'm trying to come down here. Like what's going on? Like,
Right.
okay, I'm
Right. And
actually
yeah, and like
gonna.
I think it's Saul. It might be Abu Mashad, but one of them has this thing about like basically like there's like houses by counting, which are thematic, symbolic houses, and then there's houses by calculation, which are the houses by counting are whole sign houses, like the first sign, the second sign, the third sign. Whereas houses by calculation are the ones where you do a little trigonometry to divide up the ecliptic. So those are the quadrant houses. And the houses by counting are more dynamic. Like they're describing like where are the planets moving like right this exact second. And in Horary, we're so fixated on, is that aspect perfecting? Are these, is it applying or separating? Like, is it able to perfect? Is it getting obstructed? All that stuff. Whereas in a nativity, like you can use those techniques, but I mean, if you have like uh, opposition between the moon and Mars in a nativity, it doesn't really matter if they are like perfectly perfecting and like applying and all of it. Like you're gonna feel that opposition, even if they're separating, even if they're whatever, right?
Yes. I'm gonna run to the restroom really quick. So if I'm just gonna turn my audio off and zip away for a second. You can hang out with the chat, or you can also leave for a second. I'm texting you a link to the video with which you
Oh,
can
sweet.
see the chat if you want to talk to people.
Yeah, let me hop in the chat.
Okay. BRB, everyone.
Hi, chat. Let's see. Well, yeah, let me see if there's any questions. Does anybody have any questions? We kind of are transitioning between topics. So if you have any, feel free to um, drop them in the chat. Oh, sweet. Okay, we got a couple more questions too. Oh, okay. Eric asked about the considerations before judgment, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, actually. Oh, okay, my first one was Lily. Yay! Yeah, okay. I love talking about the considerations before judgment because I think they're one of those things that they've become kind of spooky. People, the way that people talk about them often make them seem like this, I don't know, yeah, like this spooky thing. And I think if you contextualize them in with the rest of the chart, you can get a better perspective on the way that I think Lily would have liked to use the considerations before judgment. Because they're considerations, right? They're not like laws. And so that's how I usually interpret them personally, is like if I notice a consideration, I will incorporate that into my interpretation. And also, I think some of them are notes for the oracle themselves too. Like if like one that I take pretty seriously is if I'm doing an astrology during doing a horary for a client and I see Saturn in the seventh house, that is the only one where I'm like, I might not take this question, like depending on circumstances, because Saturn in the seventh house indicates that the astrologer's judgment is faulty. So when I'm like the horary question is saying that I am not trustworthy, then that's like one place where I might like neglect to take the question. Um, I do like looking at the hour ruler, ascendant ruler, all of that, the like triplicity thing. But it would be a lie to say that I immediately look at that because I mean we just did a whole area question. I didn't look at it at all. So Eric had a question about the considerations before judgment.
I
So
saw that I neglected to send it
good.
along. Sorry.
No, it's great.
Um,
It's my favorite
I
thing to
think
talk about.
Adam has a really fun reason for that consideration before judgment, which is about the seventh house Saturn, or the first house Saturn, which is that like uh in his time, right, he's working in the Renaissance in London town, and it's like terrible for your fucking, or rather in the seventh house, the one in the seventh house, where it's like this querent is gonna be a problem for you. Um,
Mm,
it's like that was a problem for your reputation. Like if you render a judgment and the querent's like, I don't agree, like you're an idiot, you know what I mean? Like that's problematic for you as an astrologer. This guy's out there like posting on whatever the 1700s version of a message board is, telling everyone that you're dumb shit.
right.
It's not
Yeah,
ideal.
I like that. Like a challenge to your reputation. And like it depends, like so I feel like sometimes I've gotten questions in general. I get questions where I'm like, can I answer this? Do I know the answer to this? I like doubt myself a little. And
Mm.
if I'm in that situation and I see Saturn in the seventh, I'm like,
Mm.
maybe I'm not the right person for this question. I got that once when I had a question about um like IVF. Uh what does
Oh,
IVF stand for? Whatever, the fertility treatment. And I'm like, I
yeah.
don't know anything about that. Like I have no point of reference for even understanding like what is the process for IVF? How are you approved? Like what are the steps? Like I was so out of my league with that question that I just didn't even know
Totally
how to begin to answer it. And so I referred that person to someone who specialized in fertility astrology, for example.
sick. Who was that?
Eric's got this great thing in the chat
The
too
fertility
about the,
astrology person.
sorry, what'd you say?
Who did you refer out to for fertility astrology?
Usually like Kira is one of my go-tos. Both of the Kiras,
I was gonna
actually,
say Kira
Kira,
Reiberg or Sutherland because I know Kira Sutherland slaps at
really, really both of them. Um, Kira Sutherland
and
is like she specializes in medical astrology.
right.
And like I don't know if she uses horary 100%, but she, like her specialty is like um medical astrology as it like pertains to the body. And so I would like that I think would be a good person. And Kira Reiberg specializes more in natal astrology and electional astrology, which I also feel like depending on your circumstances, as the person who understands what IVF is better than me, you might be able to decide whether, do you want a medical astrologer or do you want someone who can look at your nativity and your timing and help you kind of pick a good time for it? I didn't have a good
Yes.
horary recommendation for fertility.
Yeah, I
If
wouldn't either.
anyone
That's
ever
kind of
has
why I
one, I'd love
asked.
to hear it. Yeah. I think Kira Sutherland
Well,
might do some
Kira,
horary.
well, and Kira Reiberg is in her about to be deep in her horary astrology era, I feel.
I know. So maybe she's going to be our girl. That's my
Yeah,
hope.
exactly. Help us, Kira. You're our only
Eric's got
hope.
this great thing in the chat about
Yeah.
considerations before judgment. So like he says his informed hot take is that Lily was saying, let's look at this first, like those are the considerations. And then someone in the 80s interpreted that and called them strictures before judgment and made them barriers. And I feel like
Oh,
that makes a
strictures
lot of sense to me.
versus, yeah, okay. Eric, you're so good
Because
for this. Is this thing about being like, okay, actually, one guy misunderstood a word one time, and now everybody thinks
right.
this means this, but it actually doesn't. Eric had me on a void moon thing like this. I tried to
Oh
do a
yeah.
void moon ruled thing, which actually pertains to this housing thing. Um, like an election had a void moon, or it wasn't an election, but it was an inception. It was the time at
Mhm.
which I was gonna fucking do something. Like you couldn't stop me, I guess, for reasons. And Eric was like, okay, actually, due to some kind of like nuance in the wording, it's like actually it's more like it goes forward hardly was the word. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. This is Eric Purdue for anybody who's watching the playback, just for context about who I keep talking to. America's favorite translator. And and yeah, so it goes forward hardly. And he was like, okay, that actually doesn't mean it hardly goes forward. It means that it goes forward with hardship, with difficulty.
Duress.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Which has proven to be true. It seems like it's going forward, but it was like, I thought it was going to work out, then it didn't, but then surprise did. And it was just like, oh God. And then now it goes hardly on is the quote. Okay. So now this is an additional piece to this thing that is going hardly on. So okay. So, and then, okay, we also should note that what we were saying about people dunking on each other on whatever the equivalent of a message board is, Eric notes that Gadbury and he thinks Ramsay had a pamphlet flame war in the 17th century and it destroyed Gadbury's reputation.
It absolutely did. I I know
I
it
don't know
very
who either
well.
of those people are, so I'm glad that you brought it up because I just love the idea of fucking grown men in the Renaissance dunking at each other so hard by
The
a
girls were
pamphlet.
fighting. Yeah, they're like the generation right after Lily. Like, I think Ramsey wrote his book at like the very end of the 1600s, and Lily wrote his book like mid 1600s. So it was sort of like they were English astrologers right after Lily, but
Oh,
kind of overlapping as well. And I know Ramsey and Lily had some fun. Honestly, I really like William Ramsey personally. Like I like his work, but he was a very cantankerous and
he
difficult
was
person.
catty.
Yeah, he was very catty.
That's so interesting that that like comes across. Like I'm thinking about like our current round of astrologers. Like in 300 years, will they be like, this person had so many good takes, but they were such a little bitch. Like
And then I'm like thinking about like who those people will be.
I know. Will it be me? I don't. Okay. The other thing that I'm always thinking about is like how we look back and we're like, oh, these people are fucking. Like when you see like a certain author is like dedicating all of his books to one female, like someone they refer to as his student, but it's like was the student is just somebody who was like his same age and a woman. So it's just like, ah, yes, this diminutive, like disciple or whatever. But like, the shit is like to my heart and spirit, like this person or whatever. And you're like, oh, hmm.
Okay, okay. I have a really good one about William Ramsey. I'm sorry we're like talking about all the
Oh,
girls from
please.
the 1600s, but um so William Ramsey, it was from like a noble family, and then got into all this like occult esoteric stuff and was like famously very effeminate and really hated being around women and like to a problematic extent. Like
Oh my God.
he has things in his books about women just being, liars. And I don't know, he had very negative opinions about women. And I'm not saying that
Many,
that means
many
he's
such
gay
cases
or
with
whatever, but
occultists.
just, yeah, he definitely had some gender stuff going on and very strongly hated being around women and the company of women. And as best as I know, never was partnered with a woman and lived out the rest of his days with his like best friend who was a Spanish general, and I think they
Whoa,
moved to Spain to
sexy.
like live in a castle by the sea away from all of other humans for the latter
Okay.
half of his life. So, I'm
And
like,
who can blame them?
I see you, girl.
That's so fun. Um, yeah, there were signs. Like I may not confess to marrying a gay general and living in a castle, but there will be signs.
Yeah, and like
Cassandra says,
he,
spill the ancient tea.
yeah, this is my favorite story. And I mean, there's almost no
Shuly is
documentation of
great
these
for
people's
this.
lives.
Also, just by the
So
way, at all.
like I've read like the three documents about the existence of these people, and that's all there is. But I'm like, I see it. I'm reading into this.
Let the
I know
fact
this
that
story.
let the fact that I'm super gay be one of the three things that is handed down to future generations about my life.
Right.
Okay, let's switch apps. Do this guy. What the
Okay, I'm
fuck
excited to
is
talk about
this?
this Horary question. I've been
Oh
like
my God.
looking at it.
Okay. Um, let's see. I don't have nearly as many wheels as you, which I feel like I want to add some. This might take forever. Displayed. No. Wheels. No. Oh, you know what? It's in this fucking shit. Is it? Oh, this is my nightmare.
I
Okay, maybe
think
we
you
don't have to
right
give a shit.
click the
Oh, it's wheel
center.
editor.
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
like,
there's like
I was
a
building my tutorial earlier this week, so it's kind of in there.
I think first started that tutorial by explaining it incredibly painstakingly to me how to
No,
do
like
the tropical
literally.
wheels, and I have it now. It works. Okay, sine rollers. Fantastic. We're gonna add a ring. Tekin rollers. Wow, this is so fun. Why didn't I do this years ago? I will tell you why. It's because visual clutter makes my brain stop working. But in
I
this
do really
case,
feel
it's
that.
fine because I'm pretty
Sometimes
fun.
I have to turn off all the wheels because it just becomes too overwhelming.
Yeah, agree. Oh, I can move them. That's so fun. Okay, I like the way you had it where it was stacked thusly. How do I do this? Save. Whoa,
Ooh.
she's fucking crazy.
Oh, whoa, it's giving the sign rulers.
Did you not have it that way?
No, I just had the signs because it also says Pluto rules Scorpio.
Ew. Sorry. No
Yeah, I just have the
shade.
signs on the outer edge.
How the fuck do I get rid of this? Okay, can I just hit delete? That would be nice and intuitive. No, you can't. Well, we're stuck here. You had the signs on the signs on the outer edge. Apparently you can't get rid of them once they're here, which seems like it is fake, but
Oh yeah, I think there's like if you like right click, you're in the wheel editor now.
yeah. Right clicking doesn't
Um,
do anything.
if you select the ring that you don't want and then go up to the drop down menu where it says actions, you can click remove
Oh,
ring and then you can remove whatever ring you want.
okay, okay, pause that
Oh my
text
God,
support.
look at me, Astrogold tech support.
Damn, thank you so much. Okay, oh, remove ring. Wow, that is, oh, wrong one. Damn, I'm really good at this. Okay, just the deacons. Kira will be proud. Oh God, yeah, you're right, Casanti. I should not have these aspect lines. I've never looked at them in my entire life, honestly.
I hate the aspect lines.
They're disgusting. It's literally so
It's, I
horrible.
mean, that's a perfect example of it's just visual clutter. Like, does anyone look at them? What does this give anyone?
I don't know. I genuinely don't. And then what? You had the cusp annotations at the top?
I think I have the cusp annotations in the center.
I really liked this. I was surprised by it. Okay, well, this is fine for now. Beautiful. Oh, oh, you had the sign glyphs at the edge.
Right.
Okay,
And
slay.
I think you want to do, maybe you already did it, but I think if you right click in the middle and then go down to rulerships, you probably want it to be traditional rulerships. I think that'll fix the
Oh, ew, I
decans.
did not notice that. Okay, I never turn these wheels on. Also, I do almost all my work on my laptop, so let's see. What are we doing? Oh, zodiac signs. Okay, and
I'm
sorry,
just
where is
really,
that?
I think if you right click the middle of the chart, then it pulls up the drop down menu and you go down to rulerships and click traditional. I think that should fix it.
Oh shit, sure does. Esoteric. I wonder what that is.
I know, I have no idea. I'm assuming it's some weird European shit. Like
It's funny,
there's a
it
bunch of
does
weird.
traditional, it's such a traditional for the bounds. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah, and then are the bounds? I think the bounds are right.
Yeah, they were like, why is the default different for these two things?
Yeah, I don't know, it's really weird. I just always know because my midheaven is in the second decan of Libra and it's Uranus in the whatever, the modern version, and I'm always like checking. Where's that
Okay.
Saturn?
We have Palace in here for no reason other than
I love it.
I literally don't know why. Again, it's been probably a year since I did astrology on this computer, so it's intriguing to see like what I was doing. Okay. Casanti says that they love this free astroculture tutorial too.
Yes, Astrogo
Right.
tutorial.
And then Eric says that there are two kinds of people, those who are right and those who use aspect lines. Eric
Oh
says
my God, for
your
real.
wheels are valid, Hawk. And then Casanti says, look at that lovely empty center. There's something dharmically pleasing about that. Real as fuck.
I completely agree because it's like the center is where you are. Like that's where we are right now.
Real. All right, what the fuck do we have here? Who is the neighbor going to be a problem? All right. So basically, I am considering moving into this house, and the person who is like trying to lease it to me is like um who I think we'll just call the seller for like the sake of convenience of like the first house, seventh house situation, is telling me, in sort of in a way that is telling me that he has had like he lives in the house currently, and he has been like, I have had some problems um with this guy, this neighbor who is very like, yeah, okay. So basically, he's like, I've had some problems with this neighbor. And he went on to kind of explain the problems, which I'll maybe get into in a little bit. But um, I was already like in the process of like trying to like rent this house, and he was like he brought it up, and I was kind of like, why are you even bringing this up? Like, it feels like you don't actually have to tell me this. And he's like, well, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, but he was like warning me. I'm like, well, it's not a big deal. And like, why are you warning me? Anyway, so it's all very strange to me. But the thing about this guy is like when I first got there in the house, I was like, okay, anyway, so he's like my question for God or for the Horary Oracle, perhaps more precisely, um, was is this guy going to be a fucking problem, this neighbor? Because, you know, I live by myself. I'm like a single person who, like, you know, it's a little scary to just be next to a guy who's being fucking weird. That is like my worst case scenario. Um, yeah, especially if I'm like, you know, I'm trying to make this place that I live for a while. I haven't moved in 3 years, but I moved very much to a starter apartment in Portland because I was trying to move from across the country. So anyway, I expect to stay for a long time and I want that to be the case. Um, but like not if this guy's a freak. So I
Hmm.
don't want to, obviously I don't want to do it or get like locked in on the like I don't want to get locked into the place either for like a year or more, like if the guy's a freak. Okay. So the question was, is this guy going to be a problem? Right off the bat, obviously the first thing everyone would notice looking at this fucking chart is this, you know, I saw this and I was just like fucking dismay. You know what I mean? I'm just like, God fucking damn it. Like this is gonna be bad, right? Okay, so we have a Capricorn moon in the first house, that's me, and then a Mars in Cancer in the seventh house, who is like the other guy, right? Just like like sort of like broad category, the other guy. Which other guy, you know, remains to be seen. Okay, so the thing is, when I first came to this house, I was like, this is my spot. I love this house. Like, we're gonna live here. Like, this is sick. We're doing it. And then I almost didn't get it, but another guy like was gonna get it, and then he was like, never mind, basically. And so they circled back around to me and was like, oh, we're actually gonna like you can do it. Like, great. And I was like, wow, what a surprise. Also not a surprise because I really omenically felt this was my house. Um,
Hmm.
And now he's kind of like, oh, well, yeah, this guy is like a little bit of a kook, which like, and apparently this is why the other guy fucking bailed was because of this guy. Whether or not the owner said some shit to him is another matter, but because the guy does have some like obvious signs of being like not like he has some traits that I think your standard NIMBY, Portland, upwardly mobile guy would just be like, I don't like that. You know what I mean? And I think that's who
Hmm.
the owner is. Um, so as soon as I got to this place, I was like, I see some things about this house that a NIMBY would not enjoy. NIMBY meaning like not in my backyard. They're kind of like as a broad category of like for like Karens, basically. um, like there's just like shit all over the place. There's like a lot of Catholic iconography, which like actually like neutralize the mess to me. Like the fence is falling down, like it just looks like sus. And but it's like to me, it didn't read as sus in a sketchy way. It just read as sus in a way where the guy's like, I've lived here since 1993 and I
Hmm.
got a bunch of shit and I'm like using my fucking space. Like, you know what I mean? But there's like also like a
Hmm.
statue of Mary and like Tibetan prayer flags. So to me, I was like, okay, like you look like a guy who's not going to call the cops on me. Like that seems sweet,
Right. I'm
you
like,
know?
this guy seems great. I don't
No,
know. I'll
really.
live
And then
next
the
to
guy on the
him.
other side is a hippie bus, and like this dude is a geodesic dome. I'm just like, this is a cool little like spot. Everybody seems cool to me. But you know, I was kind of like, you know, if a certain type of person's, I thought it would work to my advantage. Honestly, I'm like, other people. This is a great house. I think it's underpriced for like what it is. Like it's like a cheaper spot for what I think I was like, it's pretty big for like how much they're charging for it. And I was like, I bet this has to do with this fucking neighbor. This is just actually great for me. And then it turned
Hmm.
out to be exactly why this dude dropped out. But now the owner is like in my ear a little bit, which I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do you just not want to rent the house? Do you secretly want to stay? Like, what's going on? Uh, like, why are you doing this? And he's just like, oh, it's not a big deal. But like, and then he starts telling me like alarming shit. Like, this guy's been texting me. He like tried to plant some
Hmm.
things on the side of the road. And then I was like, and then like got really mad at me when I was like, hey, can you hold off? We actually don't know whose land that is. And then like, he's like always getting on me to like trim these trees on the side of the driveway. And like, you know, he's mad about where I put my gate. all this shit. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, scary. I pull the horary. It's trash. Okay. Um, yeah, it's obviously trash right off the bat. And then I start asking follow-up questions. I have like a full page of follow-up questions for this guy, and I'm like putting them in writing. So I'm like, maybe like you'll be. I feel like people are less likely to lie to you if you put stuff in writing. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm just kind of like, look, like, what's the deal? Tell me the exact timeline. I'm now spooked. I know that no one else has put in for this place just because he's like a chatterbox. So I'm like, I'm feeling comfortable about just like asking a bunch of fuck questions. Um, and I'm like, my questions for you are like, what prompted this? Like, how did this start? Like, has he made you feel unsafe? Like, I'm asking all the obvious questions. Like, do you feel fucking spooked? Like, is he weird to your wife? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, why is he texting you? Like, what kind of boundaries have you tried to set and he's crossed? Like, I'm trying to decide, is this guy a crotchety old man? Because he is an old man. I looked him up on the owner's like records. And I'm like, is he a crotchety old man or did you just is it secretly your fault? Like Loki. Um, and the guy was like, okay, like it was 100% fine for the first 2 years or for the first year and a half I was here. And then he took umbrage with my character or something like that was the first thing that he said. Like because we had a disagreement about like lawn maintenance or something. He used some like fucking HR ass way to say this. The upshot was, um, the upshot was everything was fine until the owner of the house that I'm trying to get, like, which I'll refer to as my house just for still confusion. The owner of this place was like, hey, I noticed you're planting plants on the side of the road. Can we hold off on that until we can figure out who owns this? And the guy's like, no, basically, he was like, fuck off, kind of. In Portland, I know this. I'm not even a homeowner. You know what I mean? And I know this. This is the law in Portland. The shit next to the street, that's everybody's problem. That's the city's. The city owns it. It's everybody's responsibility. You know what I mean? And like it's kind of like the house that's like next to the road's responsibility to deal with it. But it certainly doesn't belong to either of these people. Um,
Hmm.
so this man calls out a fucking surveyor. Like he like paid $600 to have a guy come survey his land about this. Um, for other reasons too. Like, but anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna try and wrap this up. I feel like I've been going on for too long, but like, but like, long story short, dude tries to plant. The guy's like, "Can you stop that until we figure out whose land it is?" And then he's like, "I don't really know what the dude said in response." The guy gets a survey, finds out it's the city's land. Then he's like, "Okay, well, because it's the city's land, I think we should collaborate. Like, I don't think you should just do it by yourself. Like, it's like supposed to be both of our responsibilities. Like, I'd like to like collaborate on it." And the guy is just like, "You're getting in the way of me fucking trying to beautify to take care of this like patch of land. Assumedly it's been sitting here for a year and a half. No one's done anything with it. And suddenly this guy cares when he starts planting flowers on it. I don't know. I'm kind of like, again, I want the outcome to be that this is going to be fine. So, and you can tell kind of in the way I'm telling this story, where it's like, yeah. Anyway, so then this beef begins. This is in April 2024, and up until that point, they've had no problems. They lived there for 2 years before that. They bought the house in 2022. But now he's beefing about everything. He's mad about the fence. He's mad about the fucking trees. He's texting this dude, quote, questioning my masculinity. So I like, I don't know, like, what did you call this dude a cuck or like what's going on? Like,
Yeah, what does that mean? Oh no.
like what's going on? Like, you know what I mean? And he's never been rude to my wife, but he's been fucking. He just goes off on me by a text message. I think maybe this guy's trying to be nice to me, honestly, and like giving me this like information, being like, look, like this dude's a little bit of a wingnut. So that would be
Uh-huh.
nice of him. Anyway, yeah, quick questions his masculinity. And I was like, so then I'm like, okay, well, what did you try and do to stop this? And he's like, well, yeah, admittedly, I didn't really like place any boundaries until like after a certain point, I told him stop fucking texting me. And then he'll like stop for a while. And then we'll kind of like start up again when he gets mad about something else, like the trees or the fence or like whatever the other things are. So I'm trying to figure out like, is this guy a psycho? Or
Uh-huh.
is he just like fine and you pissed him off? Like what, like, like the real question is, how is this going to affect me? Like, I think that's the true nature of the question is like, how is this, is the neighbor going to be a problem? And like underlying that question is like, is it going to be a problem? Like for me. And I don't think I really like clarified it that way. Like I very much asked it kind of like off the cuff, which everyone says not to do. Like don't so you should sit with the question in your heart. But I like vibe checked it and it was like, yeah, ask. And so I did, like right off the bat, which I normally don't do. And I normally get a don't ask from the Horary Oracle since I'm probably like 5 years into my Horary journey. And at first it was like ask any question you want, like go off. Like we're trying to like get experience. But now she's like, I would like you to be judicious, actually,
I
about these
know.
questions, which led to me doing a lot less horror, and I'm sad, but I'll be back, babe. And here we are. Okay. Yeah, I feel like we can start talking about it. Does that give you enough to go on? I know you know a lot of this context already because I was like fucking like spiraling via text message.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this one a lot because it's like, okay, so obviously the relationship between the first and seventh house is not good.
It's trash.
But like who are those people, you know?
Yeah.
Because the person like have you even seen this guy? Like the problem
I
guy?
think so. I when I went to look at the place, that there was a man, an old man. The dude's last name is Ramos. So there was a dude who looked maybe like he was like Latino who was like walking with his like big cowboy hat and his like walking sticks and kind of scowling at me. And I was like, while I was driving around the neighborhood. And it didn't occur to me until literally today. I was like, oh my God, I wonder if that man in his 70s who looks like he could be Latino is this man who is in his 70s and his last name is Ramos. Like, I'm like, this, like, actually could just be the same dude. Anyway, so maybe is the answer. Like I have
Yeah,
seen
because
an old man scowling at me. He wasn't really scowling, but he was like 100% paying like way more attention to me than I felt was
uh-huh.
warranted, given the fact that I was just driving around. I was just like I literally had the "Can I fucking help you?" like internal response a little bit, which is just I have when any man stares at me. But it didn't feel like malevolent at all. It was just kind of like he was like, "What are you doing here?" was the energy in like kind of a maybe like tonally neutral way. But I was just like, "Don't look at me, you're a man," which is my response when any man looks at me. So yeah, there is this context too where I'm a little bit charged in general about like the way that men interact with me. I'm just like, that's the last thing I fucking want from a neighbor.
Dang. And that does feel very like what we were talking about with the Frawley take on um reception between like the like Mars and Cancer being like, in an environment where everyone is like, God, I fucking hate that guy.
Yeah,
Um, which like kind of, I don't know, your gut reaction. What's your relationship like to the like current owner of the house? Like what's
very
the vibe with
moderate. We've
him?
been communicating like via text message, like mostly.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't really know him. I haven't had a chance to I think he must be somewhere else, like geographically, because I haven't
Oh, I
met
see.
him. We're just communicating via text, and he's got like an agent who's like showing like who's like in charge of like managing his properties. He's like showing me the place. So like I don't
Hmm.
really know the dude. So he's a blank slate to me. I do know that I know a little bit about his story. I don't want to tell it too much because that he's actually like people would might actually be able to figure out who he is because he like owns a
Hmm.
business here. Um, but yeah, Eric says, "Damn kids taking over the neighborhood." Yeah, like if he was scowling, it was very much just in a like way, but like he also like old men look a little bit angry to me in general. I feel.
Right, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I don't know, a 70-year-old guy like walking with it, he's like doing the sticks, like he's probably like hustling. So, I
Yeah, no,
mean,
it wasn't about the way he was looking at me at all. It's just the fact that he was paying close attention to me that kind of set off my like. I was just like, why is this dude looking at me?
yeah, you're like, I'm being surveilled by a 70-year-old man, and I do not
Exactly. That's
like that.
exactly what it was. I felt like I was being surveilled. And that's actually one of the key words that I've used about like the place that I want to live. I want to live somewhere where I don't feel under surveillance. That's a key word that I put out there for like when
Yeah.
I was like trying to like manifest my perfect spot or whatever. I was like, I do not want to feel under surveillance by my neighbors, which is why I thought random bullshit in the yard neighbor, geodesic dome neighbor, schooly neighbor would all be good fits. You know what I mean? I'm like, you're probably,
Yeah.
clearly you are expect not to be surveilled. Like you're all doing things that like wouldn't fly in like a shitty NIMBY neighborhood which is where, any place I visited in a NIMBY neighborhood, I've been like, the shit that I want to do would not fly here. I have the same response. So I'm like, good.
Right.
So I was
Yeah. Yeah, when we were
surprised.
looking for housing, we were looking for the same. We were like, I want to live in a neighborhood where like there's like a dad working on a car out front. I don't want a
Exactly. Like
manicured lawn.
this dude has three motorcycles on his fucking lawn. And I'm like, perfect. Like you're not gonna have shit to say to me about what
Right.
I'm
I'll do
doing.
witchcraft in the backyard. You have your
You work on
motorcycles
your
in the
fucking
front.
motorcycles, like
We're
we're
good.
good. Yeah, exactly. But apparently, according to the owner, this dude has a lot of shit to say. So I'm like, well, that's a terrible combination, is you're doing whatever the fuck you want and you're bitching at me.
Hmm.
Terrible combo. Like, I'm excited you're doing whatever the fuck you want because then you'll let me do whatever the fuck I want. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, can we
Anyway,
talk through like I know this is a chart you've been looking at for a while and like
yes,
talking about with people. So like how are you assigning significators? Like who do you feel like I mean the moon is probably you, right? Like I don't know. Tell me
potentially.
walk me through your process.
Potentially. Okay, so yeah, moon is situation. It's my co-significator in theory, right? Um, However, I'm having this feeling in general about I'm also Saturn, right? I'm the querent. I am
Hmm.
is a Capricorn rule chart 100%. Confusing situation because I would kind of look at the guy who is my first thought was I was like, okay, like I'm Saturn and this dude is the moon. That's how I would do it normally. Or rather, I think my first thought was I'm Saturn and this dude is Jupiter, right? Where it's this like very clear, like he is the third house, or sorry, he's Mars. Because like the ruler of the third house cusp is gonna be your neighbor. That's in William Lilly. That's what John Crowley says. That's how I learned it from Adam. That's what natal astrology says. It's like pretty clear cut, like
Absolutely.
third house neighbor. So this is a nice situation vis-a-vis the significator. Additionally, Mars is in the seventh house, so it's like, okay, it's also the other guy, and it's like this question of like, okay, he's the neighbor is somebody that like you're gonna have to deal with. He's not out of the way, he's there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
He's not just entering the like he's not in the mind your own business space. He's also not in the 12th house, which would be the worst for me because it's like that's like a thief and an ope and like a, you know what I mean? Or like that's like a hidden enemy. But the seventh house, in addition to ruling friends and lovers and just buddies or whatever, business partners, it also rules open enemies. Mars and Cancer there, I'm like, all right, this is the open war vibe, is what I'm getting
Yeah.
from this,
Oh yeah.
which is
I mean, there's a
trash.
war for sure. We got to figure out who it's with, you know.
Exactly. Whose it is, precisely. Okay.
Hmm.
And then the L7 is the moon in the first house, right? So that's like we are like at war. You know what I mean? So okay, so the moon is the confusing part here, right? So it rules the seven. So who's the seven? Oh my God, I see Eli.
I know.
Um,
They're like cleaning in the
hi.
sunroom over there. How you
Okay,
lying?
so it's like if it might. I was kind of like, okay, is seventh Lord him? But no, I'm sticking with it's fucking Mars. He's the neighbor. Okay, the seventh Lord, however, is the other guy, and he's in the first, right? So it's like I'm kind of thinking like this is the guy who lives there now. You know what I mean? This is the other guy, the dude who's in my ear. He's talking to me. Like he's the person I actually have a one-on-one relationship with, whereas this man has not entered my seventh, really. I mean, he's in the
That's what I
seventh,
was thinking
but
about.
it's like I don't
Like
fucking know him.
the first house, seventh house is always, that's how it represents open enemies and your wife, right? It's like people you have that close one-on-one relationship with.
Right.
And I'm like, you are like 60% sure you may have glimpsed him once. Like to me, that just doesn't feel first house, seventh house,
No, it's third house. It's 100%. It's like, yeah, maybe
right?
one time I saw him like pruning his bushes or whatever. Like he was going for a
Right.
hot girl walk. Like, as
Right.
Mars in Cancer is wont to do.
Yeah.
He was yeah, so okay, so if the guy, the homeowner is the moon in Capricorn, well, I'll put all my cards on the table. My optimistic take is I am Saturn in the second house, just vibing, right? And he is Mars in the seventh, and this dude who is in my ear talking about him is the moon in Capricorn the first. He's currently occupying this position of total war with Mars. You know what I mean? They're in perfect opposition. Everyone's pissed. Nobody's in the dignity they want to be in. Like the moon is in Mars's exaltation, and
Hmm.
Mars is in the moon's domicile. Like they're both subject to each other 100%, and they both feel bad about it. So that's bad. Like if that were me, I'd be like, okay, like he hates me and I'm not getting away from it. Like there's no way that I can just neutralize him and chill him out, whatever. But I think this is the other guy. You know what I mean? This he doesn't have, we don't know each other like this. And so if this is and this is what's happening. And there's a thing about timing in horary. This is like kind of where I see the magic happening in this chart that I think is really cool is the aspect, as you notice, is like fucking perfecting. Literally, it's
Hmm.
41 astrological minutes away from perfect. Like that's like, in real time hours, that's like in 20 minutes. The aspect will be like, even less, I think, will be like perfect, perfect. So it's like the war is transpiring. It's begun a while ago. The orbs, etc., have begun. It's been, and now it's just like it's come to a head, but the other thing is it's about to be fucking over. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like the moon is fast. I just learned how to do this. Great. So it's like she's
Hey.
she's fucking zipping along. She's about to fuck off. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and I guess the moon is speeding up also because will you click
Right.
her again? I think it said she's only 1309, if that's 1314. Yeah, so fast is defined as over 13 degrees of daily movement. Well, sometimes it's just defined differently, but it's around 13 degrees. So she's like fast, but only like a little fast. And she's picking up speed as well, because when we asked our question from today, she was moving 14 degrees in a day. So the moon is like skedaddle. She's like, I'm out of here.
Right. And what's the fastest it goes? Do you know that off the top of your head?
She can go over 14, but I don't think she can go to 15.
Oh, okay. So she's like pretty maximally fast, but like,
Right,
but still picking up speed.
right. Yeah, the way I would judge it is like 13 to me, like 13, 14 is like kind of fast. It's like she's just over the threshold of average. And then over 14 is like super, like blisteringly fast. And
Damn.
I don't think she can get all the way up to 15. Maybe there's like some hyper specific circumstances because lunar speed is like a whole thing, right? But um, yeah, I think over 14, I'm like
That
blisteringly fast.
That actually makes me feel like your car question, like that situation might progress like faster than we think.
Hmm.
Like even
Hmm.
if she does choose to wait, just a thought.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I should hold on to that. I know. I feel like I have to have a whole conference now afterwards. Like we need a
Well,
house
this
meeting.
I'm gonna put this up on proper YouTube so you can just send it directly to her.
Good.
Okay. So yeah, my hot take, and I'm open to being wrong about this, and you should be honest with me, and the is that the moon is about to break this opposition. It hasn't fully
Hmm.
happened, but it's fucking happening. Like it's as happening as it possibly could be without separating. It's in process right now. It's currently they're beefing. And but in like literally a minute, like she's out of here, you
Hmm.
know? And
She's
no
also, is she
longer,
enclosed between the malefics?
yes, she is. No, 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 because of this.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Okay. I see.
Yeah,
Yeah. So she's
the sun is
enclosed
breaking up
between
the
the sun.
enclosure. And for
Okay.
anybody who doesn't know what that means, just real quick, a malefic enclosure or a benefic enclosure is when the aspect that the moon is separating from and the aspect the moon is applying to is a malefic. So if it would be like separating from Saturn and applying to Mars, that would be a malefic enclosure. But this sun here is actually breaking it up. So it's like actually she's separating from the sun.
Yeah, that okay, so that's an interesting. I feel like the sun needs to be part of the conversation as well. With the sun
Ooh,
sort of
interesting
ruling the
thought.
eighth house in war charts, this was a
Oh my
special
God,
interest of
yes, get
mine at
into
one
the
point
war
in the
hearts.
past. Yeah, I did like a whole war chart thing because Lee Layman has this whole take about using traditional war charts for union struggles. And
Sick.
so I was involved with people who were unionizing, and there's that whole wave of unionization happening. So I got really into war charts for that. So the way that she
Love that.
approaches it is the first house represents the like aggressor, the seventh house represents the like aggressed. Um, or alternatively, you can say the first house represents the people who are like on their home turf, and then the seventh house represents the like invader. So there's like a little bit of a conflicting thing there. I want to say Benatti is the one who gives the seventh house to the invader. I don't know. I don't want to say that wrong. If we want to come back to that, I can look up the reference. The book's like right there. But the so that's the first seventh, and then the second and the eighth are about the resources that the first and seventh house parties have. So the
Right.
sun represents
Which is
the like movable resources owned by the seventh house party. And Saturn
very
also
specific.
represents the movable resources owned by the first house party, which I guess is also
Okay.
Saturn in that context. But
Gotcha.
so yeah, so it's like I'm wondering if there's I don't know, I'm thinking about like, okay, so I think that insulting his masculinity or however he said that element is kind of interesting for fallen Mars. There's like a masculinity issue going on here. And there's a
Right.
part of me that wonders if that is like part of their dynamic because like I don't know, like in the story, I sort of feel like the current homeowner it comes off kind of passive aggressive in that way, like that sort of
Yes.
non-confrontational, like, I'm so sorry, like I can't talk to you, I'm
100%.
triggered. And then the other guy's like, okay,
Literally,
but
he
like,
was
am I
like, this
planting the
text
fucking
message
plants
is,
or not?
yeah, this text message is making me feel unsafe.
Yeah, like
Which,
there's a
like, I
bit
know
of
how
that
that feels. Like,
energy.
that does make me feel like disturbed. Sometimes people are going off of me by text if they live down the street from me, especially. But like,
Hmm.
but as you say, yeah, for me, the angle of it just feels disrespectful. Like this old man, he's 74. He bought this house in the 90s, the early 90s. He's been fucking living there for like literally the back half of his life. And this dude moves in 2022 and is like, excuse me, can you not plant those like frankly beautiful wildflowers next to the road? Because we don't know who owns it. And he's just like, fuck off. You know what I mean? My immediately response would be like, fuck off, you NIMBY fuck. You know what I mean?
That's how I feel. I'm
That's
like,
my
who cares
emotional
if you plant some
response.
fucking wildflowers?
Literally
Just
let him
plant the
plant the fucking flowers.
wildflowers.
What is the matter with you? Like you want to be that controlling where you're like, I have this big the whole reason I want to live in this place is this big ass yard. And I'm like, you have this big ass fucking yard with frankly not a lot going on. And you're like, this is what you're gonna get up in his shit about? Obviously, maybe you have some feelings about his fucking motorcycles or whatever, and you're like, I don't know. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, we need to beautify the front. Like, I need to beautify the front. Like all and I'm just like, I don't know. It just feels neurotic to me, frankly, which is like I'm reading a lot into it. But at the same time, like my first move would never fucking be to roll up into this place and be like, excuse me, like we need to collaborate on like this. You know what I like, ew.
Right. You would probably just be like, oh, cool, you plant some flowers, dope.
Literally.
Like,
Like thank you for doing that. I'm gonna shovel the driveway that we share because you're old as shit. Like, you know what I mean? I probably wouldn't
and
say
like, could there
that.
be some element of like malicious compliance with him being like, oh, okay, so we're gonna make sure we follow all the laws about this shared random plot of grass. So I'm gonna make sure you trim your fucking trees. I'm gonna make sure
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I didn't
And
even think
and
about that. That's
also
so funny.
there's I'm thinking about money a lot here. Like there's, a lot of second house involvement. The moon is,
Yes,
in Capricorn, all of that. And thinking about like the type of person who would just spend $600 on a survey on principle. Like
right.
it's
To
not
so that
very
he
in
can
line with
silence
like,
his neighbor.
that's just really strange behavior. I mean, like not to trash moon and Capricorn,
I was
but
about to say like no shade to my
like,
favorite moon sign, but
yeah.
it's so moon and cap where it's just like it's like first of all you don't have a leg to stand on. Second of all, you're being like extremely weird about property lines. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just so like fucking like moon Saturn. It's just like the passive aggressive property line shit. You're just like, my boundaries. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up. Like I'm annoyed for this
Right.
man and I'm not even involved.
That's how
I
I
began from
feel.
a very escalated place. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna move into this house. Because I had already moved into my head and I'm like, oh God, I'm moving this house. This man's gonna be like in my fucking, I didn't know who he was at all. I had no context for him. I just have man in my brain. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I think I knew he was older, and but that was like all I knew about him. But I was just like, oh God, this like fucking old man. And I was like, I'm imagining like just like some fucking dude with a shotgun, you know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
then I saw all the Catholic iconography, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, like you're like chill, you know what I mean? Like I like remembered that I had actually seen his yard and that I had gotten like pretty good vibes overall. I don't know. But like I immediately got escalated and then started like walking it back just to being like, no, wait a second. Are you secretly the fucking problem? And when I asked for the narrative, it came out that yes, actually, this
Hmm.
man started it. This dude didn't have shit to say to him until the moment at which he was like, stop fucking planting.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so
I had no
where
idea.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
Well, just I had no idea that the person who currently owns the house also moved in 2022. So you're telling me he lived there for 2 years and then was like, excuse me, we need a survey. Like,
Exactly, exactly. And then when he turned out to be fucking wrong, he was like, I don't know who that belongs to. Like, I don't know if you have a right to do that. And he turned out to be wrong. Everyone has a right to plant there. That's how it works in the whole city. And then he was like, well, stop anyway, because we need to collaborate on this. He's like, do you? Like, aren't you fucking busy? Like,
yeah, so that's kind of an interesting like read on the question of like, yes, this neighbor is a problem, but maybe not your problem.
yes. That's kind of how I've like come to see it. And it's like the actual, this dude can be, he's Mars and Cancer. He is a little, again, don't take this
Hmm.
fatally. He's a little fucking
Hmm.
crabby. Like he's a sensitive guy. Like if you fucking step on him, he's gonna at you. He's gonna be
Right.
hella passive aggressive and ask you to like trim your trees and fucking like be like, well, maybe I should get a survey to look at your fence. Maybe you put it in the wrong place. Like, you know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like this is so Mars and Cancer, where it's just like like, but but he can be like that over here, and as long as nobody's directly opposing him, like look at where I am. I'm
Hmm.
Saturn in this. I'm Saturn in Pisces, trining Mars and Cancer. And I'm a malefic too in this situation, which normally you wouldn't want to see. I don't love being Saturn in charts per se because I'm just like, oh no.
Hmm.
But that's not really necessarily how Horary works actually. But when I do see it, it's like, okay, actually the best defense against Mars is Saturn. That's how I feel about it. I mean, if not Saturn, it's definitely something benefic. But I do appreciate the idea where it's just like actually just like, and look how he's retrograde, right? He's just like he's turning away and he's Saturn. So he's just like, actually, I'm really not going to pay any fucking attention to you at all. And like, I'm just seeing like I'm looking over here and there's a wall on this side. Like that's my relationship to this man, and it's also just in harmony. It's a trine.
Right. It seems like it seems like the favorable reading to this. Like if we are tentatively thinking that the answer is yes, the neighbor is a problem, but not your problem.
Yeah,
Um, then like one of the ways that like when I run into these situations where there's just like too many people involved and you're like trying to assign significators, one thing that I like to do as kind of a technique is to sort of devil's advocate. So, okay, devil's advocate. You are the moon, the neighbor is Mars.
great, love
What
this.
planet would be the homeowner? Like how would you assign the homeowner in that case?
I don't
One
know.
theory I had was like the ruler of the fourth house. Like if the house is like the physical house itself is the fourth house, then the
Yeah,
domicile
yeah, yeah.
lord,
So
maybe. But
sure,
then,
he would be Venus, but then they're in a trine relationship.
and like, so I started going down that line of thought, but then I almost argued my way backwards because I'm like, well, the moon is the exalted lord of Taurus.
Mm,
And if we're doing the Lily thing of like, okay, we have a couple of different significators, let's do essential and accidental dignity. They're both in pretty bad shape, but the moon is more favorably, what is the word? More favorably connected to the cusp of the fourth house, whereas Venus
mhm.
is like opposite it and also like separating and getting very far away from it, and the moon is like in a whole sign trine and also like towards the end of the sign and will make another aspect. I mean, I guess it's a square, but still would like eventually make another aspect to the I don't know, like at some point I feel like we're splitting hairs a little bit about
That's so interesting though. I
that,
would have never
but
like approached it that way to get the significator. This is like one of the reasons I appreciate talking to you about it because you've like learned horror through an entirely different path than me. But when you say more favorably connected, do you just mean like by way of aspect, basically?
yeah, because I'm so what Lily would say is to look at the essential and accidental dignity. So essential dignity is which one has more, like, is one of them in the domicile and one of them is fallen or something like that. And in this case, they're both in exile. So
Right,
it's
they're
like,
both
well, I mean, there's not really
neutral.
much to go on there. They both are in exile. They both have like maybe the tiniest, ittiest bit of like weak triplicity dignity. I guess Venus is in her decan, but I mean, none of that is like great essential dignity. And
Right.
then accidental dignity is like, what kind of angles are they making? Like if you had, in this case, both planets can see the cusp by whole sign, like by sign. But, suppose you had two that were equally essentially dignified, but one planet made like a trine and the other planet was averse to the place in consideration. Then you would say, oh, the planet that has the trine that can physically see the point under consideration is like more favorably configured. And
That
so
makes
that's
sense.
sort of what I'm basing that off of. I mean, neither's good. Neither's great. But I
Precisely.
do feel like there's like maybe a little more for the moon. And then the moon, like the other thing I was thinking about is we could apply that same thing to the ascendant. Like that's explicitly how Lily tells to check between the whether the moon indicates the querent or the lord of the ascendant indicates the querent or the planet in the first house indicates the querent, is you take each of those three placements and look at the essential and accidental dignities of each, and the one that is the most dignified is the one who indicates the querent. And so
Wait,
in
so
this
sorry, say that
situation,
again. You say I take the Lord of the Ascendant and what were the other ones?
it's the Lord of the Ascendant, planets in the first house, and the moon. Those are the three planets that could theoretically represent the querent. And then the way that you select is between the three is by which is the most dignified, essentially and accidentally.
Well, that's
And so
nice. You're
here,
you're like we're
the
gonna give
moon
you the
has,
best shot you have of having
right.
of having a nice time in this chart.
Right. I feel like the way that he describes it to me, it's like who has influence right now. If you've got a lot of
Yes,
essential dignity, it's like you've got like resources, you're like paying attention, you're watching the situation. Whereas
I
if the
like
other
that.
one like has less, you're like, I'm not paying attention to this. I don't care.
I like that too because it's kind of like again, if we take the like, okay, you're like you're the roulette wheel is spinning. Talk about the nature of horary again. It's like whomst among you has the power to pay attention to this querent right now. Like which one of you
Right.
is like enabled to feel the divination to play this role for me right now as me in this
Right.
question I have. And if someone's like totally not into it, it's like, But in this case, I think there many people are being implicated, but it does actually make a kind of sense.
hmm And I wonder if that's an argument for Saturn representing you, because Saturn has kind of more essential dignity, right?
Yeah, it
Like
sure does,
at
honestly,
least
I
is
think.
Peregrine. Um, and also If we're talking about accidental dignity, I mean, the moon is rising. It's still a little debatable, but the Saturn will like perfect its sextile to the ascendant before the moon rises, right? Because it's at
Yeah.
13 degrees.
Yeah, okay, that's how that works. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So like I don't know, there's a lot of this. I feel like this question has a bit of it's like nebulous, maybe inherently because of the question, but also the sort of math is nebulous. But
Well, and the nebularity, wow. The nebularity is like it just makes so much sense to me because it's like the question is, okay, obviously he has beef with the guy who owns the house. That's obvious. And the question is, does that guy become me when I move in because of the fact that it's whoever occupies the space? So it's like, obviously the moon is him, but do I become the moon when I move into the fucking house? That's like, I think that's the real crux of the
right,
question.
right. Oh, I actually have a technique for that. Um,
Oh, wow.
move the
Of
chart
course you do.
forward and see if when the moon rises, has the moon completed the aspect with Mars yet?
Oh, wow. So, I mean, shortly, right?
Like just like I don't know, like 10 minutes or something, 20 minutes.
God, the suspense.
I know, I'm like,
Oh, 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 oh. No.
wow.
What
Yeah.
does it mean?
Hmm. Well, I do feel like that is maybe an argument for you becoming the moon then, right? Because it's like
Mm,
the moon, when the moon rises, this conflict is still present.
but for how long?
Yeah, great
Do you
question.
know what I mean?
Not
Because
long.
it's like not that fucking long. But I think that kind of so okay, interesting. Because when we just started discussing this, I'm thinking actually it does feel like I do occupy the space of conflict when I
Hmm.
move in. But the question is really, okay, but like for a second or like the whole time I live there, like, are you just gonna be like, oh, great, now we have another fucking asshole? Like that might be your response. I'd feel pretty defensive
Right, right.
if I were
I mean,
this guy.
especially, yeah, so maybe that's part of your answer is like maybe you can be part of diffusing the problem. Like, I don't know, if you like were able to, for example, introduce yourself and be like, wow, I really love your, whatever, your Mary altar you have out here, or whatever your Catholic iconography is.
I
Or do
probably
you
won't
work
call
on
it pink altar.
cars? Like, do you like what, whatever, like however you could like connect with him in a way that makes it
Can
clear
you
that
ride on
you're
your
not going to be
motorcycle?
like, yeah, right. Like in a way that makes it clear that you're not going to be like, I think we should do a survey. Like,
Ew, yeah. I mean,
because
that's
you're
how
not going
I
to be that
feel.
neighbor.
No, it's just not relevant to who I am as a
You would never do
person.
any of that.
No, absolutely not. I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want to the fucking flowers. Like, go off, king.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that is how I feel about it, is that perhaps for a moment I actually do become this guy, you know,
Hmm.
as far as this man is concerned. And
Hmm.
then what happens? You know what I mean? I
Right.
think I think the then what happens from my perspective is the moon leaves the first house and I'm rendered just like Saturn. Like eventually the moon leaves that house and continues on her merry way. I don't know.
Yeah. I did note that when the aspect perfects, the ascendant is at like 28 something Capricorn. So, basically when the aspect between the moon and Mars perfects, very shortly after, Capricorn will no longer be rising. So it's kind of an interesting
Mm,
symbol, right?
yeah,
It's like, because then
that
at
is
that point, there's
interesting.
no question. At that point, once the moon is in the 12th house by both sign and quadrant, there's no question in that chart whether Saturn represents you. Saturn for sure
Right.
represents, if it's an Aquarius rising chart, the moon is in the 12th, like there's not even a debate any longer.
Right. And this man becomes like an unpleasant memory.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and so I mean maybe that's the answer is it's like depending on the type of person the querent is in this circumstance defines how much of a problem it's going to be because maybe there's a little bit of a cultural mismatch there like this guy's like I want to
Exactly.
communicate only over text. I want to use words like umbrage. I want to get a survey at every drop of a hat. And the other guy's like, I want to work on my cars. I want to plant some flowers. I'm 70. I'm retired. I'm trying to chill. Um, and so, that I mean that definitely is what is depicted in that opposition is like a cultural mismatch, like an inability to communicate with each other in a way that is, comprehensible culturally to the other person. And maybe
Totally.
you could be part of being like, hey, I would like the cultural environment here to be one where we're not fighting with each other all the time. And I don't give a
Totally.
fuck what you do with your yard or any of the common areas.
Literally. Because I just don't. I have one thought question that I didn't think of. First of all, that I didn't think of until we saw the car chart, which is that what fuck is Jupiter? You know what I
Mm.
mean? Because
Mhm.
I'm just chilling, like in so much Jupiterian space. Like, what's that about, do you reckon?
Yeah, let's see. So Jupiter's in the sixth, ruling the. Oh yeah, you're intercepted. That's kind of interesting because
What's it?
like
What do you
none
mean?
of the cusps are in Pisces. So there's an element of,
Oh yeah, I am. That's true.
Pisces is like, I'm not even like Jupiter's like,
Well,
I'm
that
not
makes
even
sense.
ruling
I'm
this
just
house.
sitting
There's
here in
nothing
my
going on.
own, I'm sitting here in my own zone too. It's like I haven't entered the neighborhood. I haven't entered the first house. Like my sign is just like I'm trying to decide. I'm here with my money, being like, do I
Hmm.
put the money here? Do I give this man my money and rent your house? Or do I take my money and rent a different house? Like, do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I'm just like, I don't really need to like I don't know. That's kind of a fun way to like read the interception.
Right. Right. And then Jupiter is like, that makes Jupiter really malefic, I think, in a way, because it's like, so then Jupiter is, oh, wait, no, that's the 11th house cusp. Oh, okay. The
Is it?
opposite.
No,
Yeah,
it's the
I'm
12th.
getting all weird. Oh, it is the
Yeah, it's
12th,
the
right?
12th.
They're all crunched. Um, so then, I mean, that makes Jupiter pretty malefic, right? Like Jupiter is ruling nothing but the 12th from the 6th.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, that's not good. I'm like, let's see. And
Yeah,
also like
I think it's
retrograde.
objectively bad.
Hmm.
Um, and to me that kind of makes a lot of sense because here I am, like my response to this, seeing this, is I'm like, the only solution is to just not have a relationship with this man.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to be known to you, actually,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
don't want to have a relationship of any kind where I need to be monitoring myself and surveilling my behavior. I think
Hmm.
where the current owner like went wrong, the guy who lives there, is that he knocked on the door and gave this man his phone number and then
Hmm.
went on to communicate about his desires for the property. And I think
Hmm.
that I don't want to be do not perceive me, actually. You know what I mean? I want to be pleasant. Like I want to project Jupiter in all ways, like magnanimous, like I don't like live and let live, like you, sir, do whatever you want. Like, because I think that the current man disrespected this dude, and I'm kind of trying to be like, you are the king of your domain over there, but I'm the king
I
of
mean,
my
if he's
domain
lived there
over
for
here.
30 years and you're like jumping down his throat about planting some wildflowers,
It's
like
honestly
that just is
crazy.
what neighborhood, like how is that ever going to be anything
Yeah, like
but
what in the HOA
confrontational?
are you what in the HOA are you up to over here? And the
Yeah.
neighborhood is like notorious for like being chill. Like it's like you moved to this neighborhood because you want to pay way less money for more space.
Uh-huh.
And like that's what I'm trying to do. It's like here comes this guy being like, excuse me, like your house isn't painted a regulation color. And I'm just like, please, please. suck my dick. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And I
do
mean, maybe
feel
that's
like
the
this is
trine there.
right,
You're a better
right.
cultural fit.
Right,
Like,
where it's like Jupiter, it's like Saturn is in the dignity of Jupiter. Like his ethos is like, don't fucking look at this dude. You know what I mean? Like these two planets are reversed, Jupiter and Saturn and
mhm,
Mars are reversed, and it's like the 12th house, doesn't see the seventh house, and it's like I'm
mhm,
by my fucking self.
mhm.
Yeah, Rose Court says, did Mr. NIMBY say the first applicant dropped because of Mr. Flower Patch? Is NIMBY just chronically up his tenant's shit like he is with Mr. Flower Patch? Just to add to your conclusion. Yes, he was like this dude dropped out because he like applied, got it, and then came to look at the house and saw the dude's like driveway, which is objectively, if you're used to like everything being all manicured, it's like, you culturally as this, I guess, potential renter would see this and just be like,
Ew.
yeah, ew.
Ew.
Right, exactly. So I think that's exactly what happened.
Mhm.
And he only told me this because I don't know, because I actually don't understand why I got this information. I think that's partly why I'm so bewildered by it, is it's like if it's so low key, like it sounds like you're warning me in like a liability way almost, which is like weird, but okay. Anyway, the other thing is my tarot reads were all like, I was like, what's the vibe? And it was like 3 of cups for the house. And I was like, what's the vibe for the neighbors? And it was like 4 of cups.
Wow.
And I'm just like, that's
Yeah.
fucking fine.
Yeah. Okay, so if I'm thinking like, all right, so it's like there's this conflict about the flower pot shit,
Wait, I
right?
just pulled this
Um,
card. I was like, what's the deal with the
wow.
neighbor?
Wow.
This is literally the fucking Saturn. You know what I mean? It's like, I think
Literally.
this is just the
Yes.
fucking answer. It's like, we're never gonna be bros. We just don't have to be. I'm just like, no. You know what I mean? Like, no, we don't need
Hmm.
to fucking interact. I'm not gonna fucking come. And you get to set limits with me. I'm gonna respect your boundaries. Like, I don't get to tell
Hmm.
you, I don't care if the city owns it. That's your fucking flower patch, dude. Like, you've lived here for 30 years. When I've lived here for 30 years, then we can start talking about it, but you'll be dead. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Right.
And especially if you're like
Right.
an old man, it's like, and I just feel like there is just like, you like have to treat a certain like category of old man with respect, where they're just like, they don't want you to like come in up on, I mean, there's a certain kind of old man who probably wouldn't give a shit about this, maybe. But I feel like for a lot of elderly people, especially men, it's like you have to respect their nature and like their like not their masculinity per se, but it's like I want you to feel like I think you're like a player like in the game
Right.
of life who like deserves shit. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about Jupiter in the sixth too, of like, okay, so this is like the type of old man who starts a million projects and leaves them in his front yard, and he goes walking aggressively with his like walking sticks. He's 70 years old. He plants wildflowers in random, untended to plots of land. Like he's on his care journey, right? Like he's doing his
He's
self-care.
chilling.
Like if he's out of there gardening like that with on random plots of land in the neighborhood, like could this represent something more to him that it's not about, oh, the surveyor and oh, is this my land? This guy's like, I'm trying to find fulfillment in my life. I'm trying to
He's
exercise in a way that's accessible to me as a 70-year-old man. Like, is that,
100%.
and then if Jupiter's like ruling the 12th here, it's like you've got the open conflict about the survey and all this bullshit, but then there's the underlying like hidden conflict that's really about the sixth house. And
Yes.
you, as Saturn, are very favorably configured to that hidden conflict about the sixth house. You're like,
Well,
yeah,
and what
go for it.
Yeah, dude, that's so real. And like, what is the sixth house about? It's like your routines and like the things that you're doing over and over again, like caring for the for the land, like for the space.
Hmm.
Like that's such a sixth house thing where you're rolling the boulder up the hill. Doesn't matter how much you do it, you're gonna have to keep doing it. Like you have to keep trimming the
Hmm.
trees, you have to keep planting flowers in the garden. Like it's just you're never gonna be done. And I'm like, this is the whole
Hmm.
reason I want to move to this neighborhood. Is I'm like, I want space with like land to tend to and like have a nice relationship with it. And I'm glad that you care about that. Like one of the texts that the NIMBY guy, Mr. NIMBY, as Rose put it, like quoted to me was he was just like, "You're interfering with my ability to beautify the space. Like that's what um Mr. Power Walking said to Mr. Nimby. And he was just like, why are you like putting up barriers for me to like do this task that I wanted, that like we should be doing, that you agree we
And
should be
that
doing?
benefits everyone, right? Like, is
Exactly.
everyone not benefited by having some pretty little wildflowers there? Like, what's the big deal?
After receiving this fucking this like text about all these quotes, I went to the house to just like get, I was like, okay, the only way I'm gonna fucking feel this out is if I physically go and see the space again. So I went back and was just looking from the street. Again, my vibe check on this dude. He's got fucking surfboards leaning up against the house. Like you can't convince me this dude's the problem. But like more importantly, I was just looking at the offending patch. It's like literally the like this amount of land like next to the fucking mailbox, and it's like five wildflowers, and then like a bowl that's clearly for like animals to drink out of. And the dude has the
Wow.
St. Francis of Assisi statue in his front yard. I'm like, this dude loves animals. He surfs, right? One of his kids surfs. He fucking, you know what I'm saying? Like, I am on team
Yeah,
old man. I really am.
me
I'm
too.
so
I'm fully, I'm fully there.
okay. Eric says Lily says the moon, when not dignified, a mere vagabond, idle person, hating labor, a drunkard, a sot, one of no spirit or forecast, delighting to live beggarly or carelessly. I'm like, okay, is that the seller? Like rather the owner?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that.
We're just hating on this
Like,
dude. We're like,
I know,
fuck this
right? We're all
landlord.
going in. There's a whole chat just going after this guy.
Lily hates this landlord.
But I mean,
Yeah, Rose says the fact that he couldn't let the Flower Patch do his thing unless he had his hand in it so speaks to the pettiness.
and that's how the story feels to me, like just putting everything aside, like as like a, homeowner navigating things with the neighborhood we live in. We have, different cultural backgrounds. There's lots of different communication that we're always trying to do with our neighbors. Sometimes there are problems created by that. And like that's my read, putting all the horror area aside, is this guy was
100%.
like doing a malicious compliance thing. He's
Yeah,
like, okay, well, if you want everything to be by the book, then all your shit needs to be by the book too. And to be
100%.
honest, that's what I would probably do if I were him. Like if I had lived in that neighborhood for 30 fucking years and then somebody comes in who's lived here for 1 year, is like
Literally.
on my ass about planting a flower, I'm like, no, all out war.
Exactly. Like, also, like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really do feel, yeah, I'm with you. I wasn't at first, I was a little spooked by it, but I think that I'm over it at this point.
Hmm.
And it's funny how my take changed. Like I grabbed the first thing that made it seem terrifying when I pulled this chart, which was this opposition right here. I was just like,
Hmm.
obviously, fucking big, spooky, scary. And I was like, that's it. That's obviously it. This confirms all of my fears. Like, this house isn't for me. Some man is gonna come and fucking harass me at my front door. Like, you know what I mean? I just grabbed it. And then over time, I was like, okay, well, we're just gonna like walk through the process that I would do anyway, which is we're gonna ask a bunch of follow-up questions. We're gonna go back and look and like just physically let my body feel how it feels. And if my body feels bad in the space, I'm not gonna live there. And if my body feels neutral about it, then it's fine. You know what I mean? And I did all that. And now, like when I came home, I opened the chart again. I was talking to Eric on the phone and we were looking at it together. I refused to show it to him for some reason because I was like, no, I don't want you to look at it like as if it was just gonna like make it bad. So
My shame.
I don't know why this poor man is like, he's like, okay, so the ascendant is in Capricorn, and the like, I'm like, I'm not, you can't look at it.
Oh my
And then
God.
we talk through it, like placement by placement. He's constructing it in his brain. I was like, that's better somehow. We have to project it on your mind screen where it can't be nailed down. And in explaining it all to him, I was like, wait a minute, the moon is the other guy. I'm not the fucking moon. Like the moon's the other
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. I feel like I'm going to hold on to this memory for a really long time because I feel like
No,
this really got into first house, seventh house conflict, which is such an important part of horary. I mean, so many questions come down to one-on-one relationships, like, does he love me? Like, should we get married? Should I buy this thing from this person? You know, should I, how should I confront my boss? Like everything, so many things in horror come down to first house, seventh house questions.
Totally.
And this is definitely one where, like, especially if I were asking this question in a more informal sense, like not like a client who was coming to me, but just like my friend or whatever, and I was just answering off the cuff, I would have had the opposite answer, I think, than if I had sat here for, an hour or whatever, discussing
And
it
that's
with you and
exactly
like
what happened.
mulling it over.
I
Hmm.
sent it to the group chat and everyone was like, wow, fuck that opposition. And I was like, I know.
I know. I remember. I remember. I think I was on that team. I was like, oof, oof.
Well, that's how I felt. I couldn't blame anybody who saw this chart and said that because that's exactly what happened to me. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, I'm really glad we got to use it as an example because it especially after you like said like talked about this conflict of that. Um, oh, Eric notes that Jupiter and the neighbor is in the Jupiter the neighbor. Well, Jupiter um Mars is the neighbor. Sorry, I know that third house cusp is somewhere weird. Um, but
Okay,
yeah,
so
no.
Eric talking about
Eric
like
is
Jupiter
mentioning
being stated maybe
sickness.
sick. I,
He
I think of that
retracted it.
too. Like, if
Hmm.
you're an old guy who's planting flowers and like, going on like health walks like that, like to me, that definitely screams like, yeah, like you're trying to preserve your health. Maybe you've got some chronic health stuff and you're trying to exercise. Like I think about that with old people with gardening a lot. Like
Totally.
gardening is one of the most accessible ways to engage in like pretty strenuous exercise that,
Real.
it's that you're not going to hurt yourself the same way you would if you're going to a gym working on equipment. Like you
Yeah.
can pace yourself and be very intentional with it. Um,
I
so
think about the sixth house too, and it's like connection to servants. And I feel like this dude rolled up and tried to make hot girl walk dude he tried, he tried to put him in his place. And that dynamic is just there. Whereas my response, I think, to this is like, here I am, like I'm in service to Jupiter in this chart, like big time. Which means I'm in service to like, well, actually, what's the 12th derived from me? Sorry, I know this is totally getting off track, but I really want to know now. Because if I'm Saturn, oh no, never mind. It's not. Is it derived from the significator? Or is it
I
derived from
think
the
you can do it.
first?
I think you could do it all. I mean, the 12th from the first is just the 12th, right?
Right, exactly. But it's like, is it the 12th from the second? Because it's like Saturn is in the second. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think the way I would do it personally, I don't do a lot
It's
of derived
houses.
houses and I don't have like a citation. So if
Oh
someone
yeah,
has
it's
it,
the
please put it in the
12th.
chat. It's okay.
I think I agree. Anyway, it's like
Yeah.
I'm committed to like solitude, I feel like in this situation. And when I think about the servility element, like I'm like, you're an old man, dude. Like I'm trying to like I'm not saying I'm gonna like go over and do chores for you every day, but like, if it fucking snows, like I'm not gonna be like, which one of us is gonna fucking shovel the driveway? I'm fucking shoveling the
Hmm.
driveway, dog. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you're
Or
old.
like you're like shoveling like half the driveway just so you can get your
Can you
car out. Like
imagine?
that's the current guy. Like,
Yeah, like if we had like a natural disaster situation, I would be like, I am on team this guy. Like this is like my job right now is to like make sure this dude doesn't
mhm,
get fucked totally. Like at least I'm bringing you like three or four sandwiches. Like that's how I feel about it. I don't mean like I'm
yep.
making you my whole project, but I just mean like I think that my general response to being like I have an old man neighbor would be to be like let me be like at least in some small way like a little bit of like I don't want to be in your shit, but like my attitude, I think is what I'm trying to say. I have an
Hmm.
attitude of submission. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
comfortable with
Yeah,
that
like
because I'm not
respect.
partly because I'm not a man. Also, I feel like it's like helpful. It's
Uh-huh.
like it's like easy for me to just be like, eh, like whatever. Like I defer to you. Like you've been. It's just kind of like a you were here first angle. Anyway, I feel like it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm really glad we went through this one. Rose says, I learned so much, which is sweet. I'm glad. And then I think, do you have time for one more?
I could do one more.
Okay, because Casanti had one and has just arrived at a returned at a fortuitous time.
Okay,
I
yeah,
was thinking like, oh, I don't think we can do Casanti's because I don't know that they're here, but they are. Okay, Casanti is a they them, just so we all have that.
perfect.
Um, I think you're a they them anyway. Um, Eric, why do you say Jupiter is neighborish? Okay, so Casanti, don't go anywhere also because we're gonna ask you questions, I think. Um,
While we transition, I'm gonna go run to the restroom.
yeah, please do. Okay. I love how you called him Mr. NIMBY. It's so fucking fun. Okay, let's put the information into a note so I can see it all. Oh my God, my computer is operating at the very edge of its capacity running this live stream. It's like, eh. Okay, I didn't totally metabolize this with my brain yet. Just that I figured out where I'm getting my studio. Yeah, so I think well, I'll wait for Shuly to get back. I think I don't totally understand exactly the crux of your query, but I do get the general vibe. Okay. Well, Eric, we could talk about this right now because it's like Shuly's not even here, but you said it's intercepted. Jupiter is neighborish. It's intercepted in the third and rules the third by whole signs. What do you mean intercepted in the third? I don't know what you mean by that. Because I think that the cusp is firmly in Aries. So it is intercepted, but it's maybe I just don't really know what interception is in this case. Intercepted in the third, but I just don't know what you mean because I think that I know it's the third whole sign. Yeah, exactly. It's intercepted in the second. Okay. Um, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna share the original question just really quick. We're gonna fuck. Ooh, wow. I like set up my actual fucking camera, which is just secretly my iPhone for this, and I have a light. We're really trying. All right. Oh, I have my glasses off though, so what does it say? Okay. So here's our original question. Okay, I want to ask something about a tattoo I want to get. Just today, I figured out where I'm getting the money from the studio I want to get it from. It's super hard to get into. Would horary work for a when question? Alternatively, oh, I get it. Okay. Alternatively, I could ask if I insist on not looking anywhere else. Hello. Will I get it within the next year? I get it. I get it. Okay. So I've just understood it. So I kind of feel compelled to take now as the time. And it's nice that you actually went away, Shuly, so we don't have to deal with the question of whose location do we cast from at the moment of understanding.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I felt
Did you just
compelled.
understand?
Yeah, I just did like as you sat down. So it's like I was like, oh, maybe I should wait. Like I don't want to like go on without Shuly, but then I was like, no, I should read it right now. And then I was like, okay. But so yeah, this is just thing in horror areas. Like you are obviously people cast from the reader's location. So if we had tried to do it together, it would have been a little bit murky, I think.
Yeah, I love
Okay.
that. I feel like this is totally an example of the Horary Oracle just like giving us an easy one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you're basically trying to figure out, let me see if I understand this correctly, like when will like if you try and get a tattoo from the person you actually fucking want to get a tattoo from, will it be within a reasonable time? Like within a year, basically.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Like it's one of those exclusive studios with like
Oh,
a major weight.
I see. I see.
Oh wait, I lost my comments. Where are my friends? All I can see is Eric saying so big and Gabe saying tremendous. I don't know what they're talking about. Oh, here it is. Okay, it's several artists in the same studio. Can I ask
Oh, I
what
see.
studio just for fun? Nosy. Um, tattoo in a reasonable time. Oh, well, we'll say, will I get the tattoo this year?
Yeah, that sounds good. And it's within the next year, right? So within 12 months from today, essentially, not like within the rest of
Yeah.
2024. Wonderland. That's cool. I don't know it.
Oh, I remember them. Wait, are they? Yeah, Wonderland Tattoo. Doesn't she do all the animals? Is that the person? I think she's like Christian. I seem to remember that.
Cool.
Okay, hang on. Shit. Did I just fuck this up?
Whoa.
Okay, so basically the question is, whoa, hello?
Just gonna go pull up the considerations before judgment
Yeah,
right quick.
do.
I
While you do
actually have them
that,
open already.
I'm gonna get some nuts because I'm starving.
Yeah, do it. Um, So for those in the chat, I am pulling up the considerations before judgment, which is actually something that um, Eric asked about earlier on, which is oh yeah, sorry. Okay, yeah, let me explain my woe before I like get all into my like PDF searching. So I think the reason that Hawk and I had that like initial gut reaction is because you see 28 degrees of Capricorn is rising. And that is in line with one of Lily's considerations before judgment, which was what Eric was asking about earlier. Eric mentioned, if you all weren't here, that there was someone in the 80s who kind of interpreted the considerations as strictures. And so they have like a little bit of like a spooky lore associated with them. But I, Hawk, Eric all seem to be of a similar opinion that they're things to look at before you do your judgment, you know? So it's not like it's the end of the world or anything, but just something that came up is having very early degrees rising or very late degrees rising. So let's say like 0 degrees, 1 degree, 2 degrees, or um, 27, 28, 29 degrees is one of Lily's considerations before judgment. And I am pulling it up right now. Uh,
Is this the one that's like it's too late to ask the question for some reason?
do you want me to just read? I can read his quote.
Yeah, let's go.
This is on page 56 of Deborah Holding's retyped edition of Christian Astrology for future reference, if anyone ever wants to check it. Lily says, if 27, 28, 29 degrees of sin of any sign, it's no ways safe to give judgment, except the querent be in years corresponding to the number of degrees ascending, or unless the figure be set upon a certain time. For example, a man who went away and or fled at such a time precise. Here you may judge because it's no propounded question. So obviously that is a very densely, 16th century business. But the way that I read this is if 27, 28, 29 degrees are rising, it is hard to give a trustworthy judgment. Um, and one of the ways that you can give a trustworthy judgment is, for example, if your querent is 27, 28, or 29 years old, that's one kind of like thing that dispels this consideration. Um, or if there's something about like the way that I understand his line about unless the figure be set upon a certain time, my interpretation of that is essentially like if it is very radical in some way. So the example he gives is like, let's say you ask a question with 28 degrees rising, and the question is about a man who ran away. And when he ran away, 28 degrees was also rising. So it's like it roots into something else. That's how I read it. I'm super curious if anyone has any thoughts about uh, that. Oh yeah, and then Eric gives, I often read it as the matter is about to change. And I think that that is a common interpretation, kind of a common, I guess interpretation is the word of what Lily is saying. If it's very early degrees, then it means that the situation has just started and you can't quite make a decision yet. There's not enough information. And if it's very late degrees, it means that it's hard to give a judgment because the situation might change soon. So yeah, I really like that addition as well. So yeah, so I would say it's like the years thing, if it's like radical in some way, like for example, Casanti, if you were like a 28 degrees Capricorn rising or something like that. I know using nativities with horary is a little bit controversial. Not everybody agrees with that, but I often do. Or yeah, or the situation changing soon. So that's why we all said whoa. Anyway, we can progress on with the horary question, but I think that was a good aside.
Yeah, totally. What was I about to say? I can't remember. Yeah, I feel like the one that we just did about the neighbor was just past the point of it being like it's too early to know, which I think is actually kind
Yeah,
of
I think it was
interesting.
5 or 6 degrees,
Yeah, it was
right?
5, which I think is kind of fun
hmm
because it's like actually like, okay, it was just too early to know, and now it's not. Okay, you have
hmm
Rahu at 28 cap.
Oh,
Okay,
interesting.
actually, you want to know what? I swear I'm not making this up just to make an excuse to read the chart. Needles as the nodes, I have seen the nodes radically in more piercing and tattoo charts than I can count on one hand. Like
I can
some
see
kind
that.
of like angular, or not radically, but angular, like some kind of angle just contains the north and south node. And I think about it as in both the like the nodes are like they work together, right? Because they talk about like they're like an axis of the lunar situation. And I feel like that imagery brings to mind like a hollow needle, like piercing the chart. You know what I mean? It goes through one end and it comes out the other. Like it's like 28 cap to 28 Cancer, and that is the ascendant descendant axis of this chart. Um, those are your nodes. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
that's
fun. Like
interesting. I like that.
when I got this piercing, my eyebrow piercing, the nodes were MCIC, like fully angular. And I've seen other ones just like it because I was kind of like, damn, it just like really stuck out in my mind. I was like, wow, damn, that is so piercing needle coated. And then I start seeing it everywhere, obviously.
That's interesting. And I think I actually maybe have can corroborate that as well. And, I've
Uh-huh.
also had experience like working at needle exchanges and things like that, where like we're dealing with needles in a non like cosmetic sense. And yeah, I've seen some interesting like Rahu especially stuff with like needles. The person who runs the needle exchange that I worked at has like Rahu rising, for example, and like I don't know, there's interesting things like that. I'm gonna hold on to that. I want to go back to that.
Yeah, I just love that. It's like it's so visual, such a visual, like haptic way of like seeing it. Rose asks, for example, could the artist the question is about could it be that the artist the question is about could be leaving the studio within the time span of the query.
Mm,
And I love
hmm
this because it speaks to like what is the parameters of the oracle. You know what I
hmm
mean? Because it's like, okay, well, if we're asking the question, surely like an all-seeing oracle would be able to tell us that the artist is going to leave, and then like, why would that be a thing? But I think that free will is a place that fucks with divination a lot. So it's like there is in my brain, I immediately lead to like, yes, they could be, but they don't know it yet. So it's like that person hasn't actually decided to leave. They probably aren't sure at all they're going to leave. It's like hasn't totally started unfolding, and therefore it's like
hmm
not reflected in the material situation because like it hasn't like distilled out of the cosmic mind into actual fucking reality in any meaningful way.
I love that. Ibn Ezra has this whole thing about how using choice connects with the part of your soul that is divine and isn't governed by the planets. So it's like if someone hasn't made the choice yet, Horary cannot tell us the answer, according to Ibn Ezra. That's his opinion. Can I
I'm so
ask, could
obsessed with
you switch
that.
it to Regiomontanus houses? I was like looking and I was like,
Stop.
whoa, all the cusps are at 0 degrees. That's crazy. And
Oh,
then I
Lamau,
realized.
sorry. It's my automatic setting because I'm a natal astrologer primarily.
I think if
Did you?
you right click the circle in the middle, like you right click the chart basically, it should pull up a menu that gives you, oh no, that's not how you do it. I think you do, it's
I
like I
did it.
have the
It's fine.
muscle
It
memory.
happened.
Oh, you figured it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hit it's like select and then you go to I hit
That's what
select
it
edit
is.
chart and then the drop down houses.
Okay,
Okay, here we
perfect.
are.
That looks better.
That does look
Okay, let's start
better.
assigning things. So,
Well,
um, go ahead.
I just first off, I mean this I don't know if this person's in charge of fucking anybody, but Venus, I feel like is hugely implicated in the idea of
Right.
getting art involved. And Venus in a Mars ruled sign, I actually use this. I use Venus Mars connections as one of my like tattooing is one of my metaphors for like Venus in Mars's sign or Mars and Venus sign because it's like literally like you're using a stabbing implement to create art. It's just like really bang on. Kat Von D famously has Mars and Libra, and I think we see like that type of reception like a lot.
Yeah, definitely, completely agree. As someone with the Mars Venus conjunction.
And I know that there's
Um,
isn't there kind of like a vaguely Venusian quality to this shop? I can't really remember, but I sort of seem to
oh
remember
yeah,
them being kind of like anyway, I don't know.
it was called
But
Wonderland, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Mars
Cassandra was
Mutualist.
saying lots of florals, like they do that kind of
Exactly.
stuff. It's
That's
called
what I remember.
Wonderland. Like that feels so
Yeah, okay.
venereal.
Their fucking logo on their website, like their main website page is skulls and roses. So
Whoa.
like
Yeah.
come
Oh my
through.
God, that's so Venus and Scorpio. Stop.
That's really funny.
Wow. That's amazing. Mainly
Um,
woman artists, Casanti says as well.
yeah.
So that's part
Okay.
of it too. So,
That's really funny.
almost certainly, statistically, it would be most likely that your artist would be a woman.
Right. Yeah, I mean, or it's like not just leaving, it's like they could hire somebody else who actually is the person you really wanna or like someone's just gonna fucking show up that actually you'd rather get a tattoo from. You know what I mean? It's like the
hmm
situation might change. Okay, but we can try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the way that Lily says it, I believe I've got it. It's his specific word is like, it's not safe to give judgment. So it's like basically what we are saying as astrologers is by accepting this question, we're going to try to answer it to the best of our ability. But like if we're wrong, like I'm not putting my reputation behind it. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I read what Lily is saying. Like it's not safe for my authority to pronounce a judgment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh, and
So
it's going to be a
yeah,
floral tattoo.
don't write any flamey pamphlets. Should we
Yeah, right.
be wrong as shit? Yeah, like if you were paying me, for example, I might be like, I don't actually think I'm gonna do a good job at this. So like I might offer you your money back first before bothering. Like I'll
Right,
give you the
right.
choice. But
Maybe
because
give
we're
you the
here,
judgment, but refund you as well, like something like that.
yeah. yeah, I probably wouldn't refund somebody if I was doing the work. I would just be like, you get to pick if you want me to do, if you want me to do a chart that it's telling me I can't do, or if you don't, I'm happy to do it and you're
Well,
welcome to pay me. But
that's why you're a successful business owner.
okay, Casanti vows to flame us via pamphlet if we get this wrong. So with that,
Okay.
no, on that note, we can proceed.
Okay, all
um,
right, perfect.
So okay, I think that Venus is involved, but does that even fucking matter? What that's the real question. Oh, another problem with like late ascendants is doesn't the cusp jump forward into oh no. It's a planet that's at the cusp of the house, jumps forward to the next house. Never mind. Eric says Warnock will read all charts, but will tell them that things might change in this case.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that's how I read Lily's considerations when the astrologer's judgment is under question. It's just, don't be so bold. Like don't, you know, don't feel like you can pronounce things so confidently under these types of circumstances. See,
Adam
again,
also
Warnock, successful business owner. He
Adam
still reads the
also takes
chart.
another successful business owner. Adam also takes the perspective that all charts can be read.
Hmm.
So, yeah. Okay. Any thoughts?
Well, so I'm immediately like, okay, we have another moonrise chart. So we'll jot that down. The moon
So
is
what that
rising
mean?
and like in the next sign, yeah, I know, in the next sign down. So we
Oh,
want
right.
that's like the first thing that jumps out to me. We're dealing with really kind of similar circumstances. So we have Saturn in Pisces ruling the ascendant and the moon this time in Aquarius rising in terms of which we assign to our querent. And so maybe we can like just hold on to that. Um, and then let's see. So the artists, like, I think that's probably the next person I would assign. Where would you go with that?
Probably Venus. Honestly,
Venus, right?
instead of it being a lord, it's like the question, it's like a topical significator. Like, I think that the topical significator of an artist is going to be Venus, and that the fact that it's angular and Venus in a Mars rule sign and the synergy with the fucking
Hmm.
shop itself, I think kind of answers the question.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what Lily's approach would be as well there. Because I guess when I was listing there was the three options for a significator, like the moon, the planet in the house, or the ruler of the planet of the house. I do think he has also something about the natural ruler of a thing, like Venus just ruling artists. Is that called Atma Karaka or something in Sanskrit? There's a
No,
word for this, and
I think the Atmakarika, and I am a little bit talking out of my ass because I'm not a Jyotisha, but the Atmakarika, I believe, it's like actually I've just looked it up and checked. It's the planet with the highest numerical value in terms of their degree in the sidereal chart, and that's like your sole purpose, like
uh-huh.
SOUL, your sole purpose significator. I know this one because I got a reading with Nate Craddock who told me that my Atmakarika is Mercury, which like
That's
just
right.
is the only thing that's ever explained really why the fuck I'm so mercurial despite having a kid in Mercury that is not super aggressively declined.
Right. Yeah, because that's right. Because Atma means soul. There's
Mm.
another because Karka is
I've heard it Atmakarika, like that's fine.
Karka. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think you're
soul
right. It's
and
usually the stress on the
significator.
first. Uh-huh. There's another word. I can't remember it. Austin talked about it like 100 million years ago, and I wrote it down, but I have no idea what it is. But anyway, the idea of like a natural ruler, like just
Yeah,
Venus rules artists in general.
I very much learned horary as natural significators are super useful to use and to apply. And I think William Lilly also talks about it, but you would know better than I.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And that we would just do the same thing, right? We'd look at essential and accidental dignity of the various planets that could be that ruler, including the natural ruler of the topic. And in this case, because Venus is so angular, like I feel like we could just stop. We don't need to pull out the
I
calculator.
agree.
Like we can just say like Venus, natural ruler of art is culminating in a question about art. Done. Um, okay. So then I guess that comes back to like, who do we assign to the querent? I'm wondering if this is a situation where the moon would make more sense
I kind
as
of feel
the
like too, because it's
querent.
about the body,
Oh, that's true. I was just thinking in terms of
kind
like,
of.
the ascendant's like about to change signs. Like
Yeah, I
in
agree.
some ways, we're saying like the ascendant is not super trustworthy right now. But the
Because
moon,
same Lord.
the moon doesn't have any considerations. Like we could consider her to be and more trustworthy for us to build a divination.
Yeah,
Super fast.
I'm here for
That's
it. Let's do
cool.
it. She's
Okay. So
fast.
then
She's coming up. Yeah, I like the idea also of the two most angular planets being the ones who are having a conversation. It kind of makes sense to me.
hmm hmm
So what
and
I
so
would
then
look for basically is what happens when does the moon make contact with Venus?
right, because it looks like she's being like extremely obstructed actually, right? Because there's a trine to the sun first
Trine to the
before she
sun
can square Venus.
and then a trine to
Oh, and a
Jupiter.
trine to, wow.
But in a timing question, I wouldn't really be that bothered by that because, well, I guess the question is it going to happen in this time frame? But it's really a timing question, I think, of like when. So
hmm
that honestly might be a no. Is like it's not going to happen this time frame, especially because if this is the artist, then this is the next artist using that job rule. It's like the first
Oh,
person. It's
yeah.
like it's like it's going to hit Jupiter before it hits Venus.
Uh-huh.
So it's like maybe you just find a different guy, honestly. But again, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm tentatively thinking that direction as well. Just looking
okay,
at that
so
obstruction.
what we do is we advance the chart by what? How do we do this again? It's been a long time since I've tried to do timing with Horary. Is
I'm
it by
so bad at the
hour?
timing. Let's
I
see.
might need to break out for all ages because I'll need him later anyway because I need to look at the table for like when the
I'm for the chat, I'm literally looking through my Christian astrology book 2 study guide right now. Because Lily has some really good timing things.
yeah, the Horary textbook by John Frawley.
Beautiful.
It's got this fucking hole in a page because I dripped coffee or tea on it or something and then just like tore out the wet spot for some reason. All right. Aspect, perception, sensitivity. Also, we just both have our texts. Okay, timing.
Right.
Okay, this is the table that I was looking for, which
Oh,
shows
great.
it shows basically like, well, this will come up later. Hang on. Okay, the first thing that happens. Okay. Oh wow, this is far longer than I. My students can be recognized by having the words consult your ephemeris branded onto their foreheads. Branding is painful, so please pay attention here. It is where the aspect perfects that matters. Oh, it's the number of degrees, right? Duh. Okay, the sun at 10 Taurus applying to Mars at 14 Leo would typically perfect when the sun is about 17 Taurus, not 14 Taurus.
Right.
So I forgot about the counting degrees aspect. Okay, so basically what we need to do is we need to move the moon forward until she contacts Venus. And the number of degrees it takes to get there will be the quantity of time that it takes. Now, what unit of time it is, I think we're a little bit out of luck in that regard. It might be longer rather than shorter. Um, so let's just do it. Let's just pop her forward. Um, I'm taking it forward by the hour. This is confusing as shit. We really need is an astrology app that lets you do this without spinning the chart. Okay, so they do connect at 24. I just wanted to make sure that Venus, the reason I tipped it 4 is I wanted to make sure for the chart that Venus didn't move to 25 before the moon hit her. And the answer is no, she does not. So let us return to our original time. So that is how many degrees? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. It's this many. Okay, it's 7 degrees.
And isn't there something like when it's angular?
Hmm,
I always have to look this up.
by all means. Okay. So like when you have, there's a little bit of common sense involved here. Like if you're asking a question like, when is my bus gonna arrive? You don't, it's not gonna be, the answer's not gonna be like 12 weeks.
Hmm.
It's gonna be 12 minutes, like you probably know. And it's like either gonna be 12 seconds or 12 minutes. If it's 12 seconds, you'll find out sooner rather than later, and you don't have to figure this out at all. But I'm just saying there's a little bit of common sense involved. So it's like, okay, this guy says, okay, so angular houses by their nature are slow. So we have to decide like, are the significators in what type of house? And I think we want to see what type of house is our guy in? Like, where is Casanti? I think is the real question.
Uh-huh.
The time unit is relevant. Okay, he's dunking on Lily, unfortunately. If you read Lily, you will have found that he brings nothing but confusion here. That probably is prone to this. He has a lot of like ticks. He's hot ticks. Um, First he gives 2 contradictory scales of timing. Second, he pins both the fixed units. Anyway. Oh, right. So Lily, apparently, according to him, and he might just be wrong, but according to Frawley, he says that he pins angular houses to years automatically, which he's like, obviously this is unhelpful if the question is like, will I find my boyfriend's phone? But we have to say, to be fair to Lily, nobody was fucking coming to him to ask like, when will, like, am I like to ask these questions that I feel like would have been resolving in a day. You're not going to go consult your
Right.
local
Like by the time you
astrologer.
actually got to his office, like the question would already resolve.
Exactly. Like it's not like DMing your fucking astrologer and being like, "Can I ask you a horary?" and them saying yes, and that's like it all unfolds within 5 minutes. It's like that's not. I don't think that would have been at all how it worked. It'd be
Mhm.
like, "Where is my cow?" and you're only paying this fucking dude if you've already really exhausted your regular way of finding the cows. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway,
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at one of his example questions that has a timing element, and it's like, when will I die?
yeah,
You know, that's the time frame we're talking.
and that's the level of shit that you would go see an astrologer about up until like very recently.
Right.
Like you're not hitting these dudes up for like something casual. Okay, so fast, middle, or slow. So Frawley like comes up with a way to deal with this. Casanti's basically saying, okay, so 7 months or 7 years, basically, I guess, or it could be weeks. It could be weeks, months, or years. I kind of doubt. I think we can probably knock years out, probably, because the odds that it's gonna take you 7 years to get in with this tattoo artist seems like a little bit.
Yeah, and is it so angular is the short one, right? Or does Frawley say it's the opposite?
Okay, so Frawley says angular is the longest and fixed is the longest.
Wait, fixed is the longest?
Yeah, so this is long, long is what we have here.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, angular and fixed.
Which does imply
Okay.
7 years, actually. If the options are 7 weeks, 7 months, or 7 years, it's like that's a long time. And this is where I think this consideration before judgment may come
Mm-hmm.
in, is it's like
Mm-hmm.
you might just be like, this is I'm tired of waiting and I'm gonna do something else, or I'm not gonna actually get the tattoo I thought I was gonna get, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that the
Yeah,
answer here
totally.
is literally yes. If you continuously attempt to get a tattoo from this person, it's going to take you 7 years. That
Hmm.
seems unusual, even for Portland's fucking tattoo scene, which as I know directly. Oh, so the way the studio works is when each artist opens their books, you can apply with your idea and they pick the ones they like. So it actually could take 7 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, I hate applying for tattoo artists who do this kind of booking because you send them an email and if they don't like your idea, you just never hear from them again. And I don't know, it just feels
Wow.
it doesn't work for my it takes me a long time to write
Mm-hmm.
those emails and I don't know. Anyway, I don't fuck with it
Mm-hmm.
personally, but that's totally irrelevant. If you were my client, I would not have said that. Like a in like a session as opposed to on YouTube.
Right.
Um yeah, no, you're exactly that's kind of how I feel. It's like I feel that way too. Is I'm just like I don't want to, but I'm not putting my whole ass behind being like this is 7 years, but it is the number seven, and then of the possible duration lengths, it's long, long. So it's like as long as it could reasonably be.
Hmm. And I mean, realistically, like the to return to the actual question is, will I get this done within the coming year? And it's like, I don't, it's seven something, but regardless of how we judge it, it's like the longest possible amount of timing that we could use. Like it's seven of the longest possible units, right?
Yeah,
Because they're like angular
right,
and fixed.
exactly. So, Cassandra, you say it does feel hard to pin something this important on something so unpredictable. Yes, this is my precise issue with choosing a tattoo artist who books this way, is I have to really, my ideas for tattoos are artist specific. So it's like I really have to sit
Oh,
with
totally.
myself and be like, what do I want from this person? Like, what about this person's art style has like sparked this desire in me to get tattooed by them? And what do I think I could trust them with? Like, which specific plan? And then I pitch, and if I
Yeah.
have to pitch it to them and then they just like don't respond to me, I'm like, that's a lot of like distillation of my like my arrows or whatever that I'm doing just to be ignored
Hmm.
in your inbox because like you know what I
Hmm.
mean. It's not worth the effort for me personally. I don't like any tattoo artist that much.
And you're putting something so intimate out there in the ether and then having that loop never be completed. You're just like releasing all of that energy out there.
Yeah, I did it once and I was like, wow, that was fucking horrible. Like I just like internally committed to like getting this like really special tattoo from you and then I just never fucking heard about exactly. Rose has this anti-collaboration. I just like it's just not my fucking vibe. I just saw this Instagram reel that was like yeah, it was like one of those like POV or you're trying to figure out tattoo artist booking process. And it was like this person was like, if I like your idea, I will spit directly on you. And it was like there was just kind of like
Right.
spoofing this exact fucking dynamic between tattoo artists and clients right now because I feel like there's a huge shortage of quality artists and there's suddenly oh great there's suddenly a ton of people who want tattoos like the like demand has gone up and increase of people with enough experience to render a delightful tattoo as it can't possibly rise accordingly. So
Hmm.
all of a sudden you have these artists who are just like, first of all, go fuck yourself. Second of all, if I deign to bless you with my needles, this is what you have to do.
And then does that
Anyway,
mean that like every time they are open their books, you like put a bid in again and again and again? Like that to me would be really hard on my heart to like have that be denied like one time even would be a lot for me. And to be like trying for, I mean, are we talking 7 years maybe? I don't know. That would be a
right.
lot.
Because Auntie just said, yeah, I already applied once and didn't get picked. I mean that it just yeah, it's hard. I feel like what's the
Seven
alternative is
lifetimes.
my question for you is what's the alternative? Like you're asking this question, I think, because you maybe have an alternative in mind. Like, and
Hmm.
what is that, right? Because you're kind of thinking, do I bail or do I stick with these people? And my feeling is maybe you just keep applying until you find somebody else who's satisfactory.
I mean, hey, that's in talk in terms of like pragmatic approaches, I think that's something to be said.
Yeah. I mean, I would render this judgment just by horary. If it was like, yeah, it's gonna happen really fast, I'd be like, great, keep the lights on or whatever. Yeah, Cassandra says I don't have an alternative. I don't I'm having this exact same problem, Cassandra. I'm finding it very hard currently to find a tattoo artist. who is available and quality at the same time. Um, yeah, I've looked super hard and haven't found anyone else that meets my Venusian standards. I feel you. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't think it's 7 years seems like a really long time. When I'm thinking about whether or not that seems like a really long time. So
Hmm.
maybe what I would do is keep applying for 7 months. And if it passes that duration, then stop applying. Does that make any sense? Anyway, I'm sorry this isn't more satisfying. Unfortunately, we were told it might not be at the beginning of the question. Do
I
you have
hate it when that
do you have
happens.
any more shot thoughts, Shuly?
Uh, well, one thing is that Lily also talks about using, I mean, this is why I always have trouble with these types of questions, and maybe I should like get into Frawley about timing, because Lily gives so many different options. And one of the things he talks about is like using your judgment in the context of a question. The unit can also be a half unit. So like a half
Mm.
year or a half month are also on the table.
Oh, interesting.
And so, you know, maybe 7 years is too long, but 3.5, like 7.5 years, that I mean, that's not a crazy amount of time to wait for a really highly booked shop.
Yeah,
And
it's
I was
not.
looking at, you know, we really zoomed in on the Moon Venus thing, but a couple
Yeah.
other things that are potentially relevant to the chart is like the ruler of the ascendant being Saturn, mega, mega, mega peregrine and retrograde, and then also having Mars in the sixth house, but seventh sign. Like the Mars has just recently set as well. One of the things that Eric mentioned in the chat that I thought was a great observation was like, if Venus is the artist, then maybe the seventh house is like their business practice. Like the first house, seventh house relationship is about that sort of transactional side.
Mm.
And I wonder if that's part of the answer. Is it does seem like, I mean, putting all the horary aside, it does kind of seem like the answer to this question is going to be like you have to subject yourself to an incredibly like mercurial and kind of not very grounded, like, well, I guess I said mercurial. I meant that more in the colloquial sense, but I guess in a way it's kind of lunar, right? Like they rhythmically open their books and you just put it in there and maybe it goes into the ether and goes into the wilderness, or maybe you get selected and then you just keep going rhythmically until they, you know, accept your idea. Like to me, that is kind of like lunar, and also like unpleasant in the way that like Mars in Cancer is like lunar and unpleasant. So I don't know. Those are just like a few things I was thinking about of like, you know, is there an element of like dealing with that, this type of situation is inherent to working with this artist? And then maybe our answer is like, I mean, I feel like coming back to the original question of will I get this tattoo within the next year from these artists? It would be hard for me to say yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, you know, we can talk about a lot of different solutions, but in terms of like you have like a yes no question at the root of this, it would be hard for me to say yes to that question. Um, and uh yeah, and like we have those obstructions too. So it's like the dispositor of the ascendant ruler is one of the obstructors. What is Leo in this? Oh, Leo's intercepted. That's really interesting. So the sun is like the
Right? Like
main
there is
obstructor
no
here
other.
and is ruling an intercepted
Yeah, I
seventh.
see it. Like it's kind of like it's like they it like this it's like Leo wants to be the seventh. Like it's like it's like the next planet that gets contact is Leo. And one wants that to be the seventh, but actually isn't. And it's also not the next
Hmm.
guy either. It's like the moon
Hmm.
is the seventh and Mercury is the next guy.
Hmm.
So it's like what you have to find like who's like I think Mercury is the guy because that's who you contact
Hmm.
after Venus too, and it's like instead of it being a square, it's like the very next aspect from Venus is this trine to
Hmm.
Mercury,
Hmm.
who is a
And the
person,
obstructions via a trine
Mercury.
too.
Yeah, I actually like this because it's like Mercury in Libra is like, it's that same Venusian sensibility, but with technicality. And it's not so I feel like you will find a different person who matches your sensibilities. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Hi,
Hmm.
Harlow.
Like in and out of the chat.
Yeah, like the
Yeah,
next
that's
guy is coming and it's like a Mercury and Libra sitch as opposed to a Venus in Mars's sign sitch. Which
hmm.
does, I mean, I know I hear what you're Harlow, I have one in the queue that I haven't gotten to, and I'm not sure how we'll feel at the end of this one at any rate. So unfortunately, probably not an additional one. But I think we're gonna do this again sometime, maybe, if
Yeah, this is really fun. I tell you this again.
hell yeah. Yeah, Cassante, I feel like you're gonna find your dream tattoo artist, but it might not be the people with this somewhat frustrating booking process, or maybe somebody else will join the shop or something who has that same standards. Yeah,
Hmm.
maybe you'll have a different idea. I mean, I wouldn't think that that would be the seventh house guy changing so much. Um, but yeah, I mean, honestly, you can also just automate it, fucking like just like put the same email copy paste to each artist when they open their books. I have no idea. Anyway, I'm sorry that it's so annoying though. I'm having the same problem, genuinely. The
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest tattoo
One
culture is
thing
not friendly to
I
me.
feel like I should pitch in there is
Yeah.
the sign of Libra is traditionally the sign associated with flowers. When the moon is in Libra, that's a good time for planting flowering plants, like that kind of thing. Um, I don't know if this is like super related, but it does seem like the flowers are part of it, right? Because like part of why, like if that's like we're talking about the obstruction in Libra, is like part of why you have to work with these people is because you want a particular kind of floral tattoo, which they sort of specialize in. I'm not sure that's anything much to add, but I feel like that was just something I didn't mention and wanted to add.
Totally. I love that. That's so
Yeah.
fun. Um, okay, sweet. How are we feeling? I'm kind of hungry and my side of my head hurts from wearing my headphones, so I might have to log out here. I'm sorry to those we didn't get to. I appreciate y'all submitting. Um,
And like honestly, I had a lot of fun with this. I would totally come back and do this again.
great. I would be so happy to have you here. And if y'all use YouTube a lot, like definitely follow me. I would love to have like a little bit more of a local audience instead of having to like forge off into other platforms that I also use to harvest people. Just like it seems nice to be like YouTube. Oh, good. Casanti says honestly, it resonates with what I kind of feel in my heart. That's really that's my favorite in a way. Like my favorite way to use horary is just be like, look, here's the fact that I see it. And someone's like, damn, I knew it. I knew that's how it was.
And actually, I think that was a theme of all three of our questions today. Like,
Real.
there's like a
Yeah.
gut feeling, and the horary, we got more information about the lay of the land that allowed us to ultimately like trust the gut feelings in a lot of ways.
That's so true. Yeah, like the car question was just like everybody around your querent was just like, okay, but like, do you really need to do the hard thing? Like, we could
Right,
just we got you actually.
right. And you were like, I don't know, I kind of want immediately on the side of this flower pot guy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then the situation is like Santi feels kind of the same. Yeah, well, it's funny because
Hmm.
mine, the one I presented was kind of more like I this resonates in my gut as the worst case scenario when I first pulled it. And then it's like this is why like one of the things that Adam really teaches and that I also like I have adopted this 100% is that you really should approach the oracle with like a sense of like regulation and purpose. Like I'm not saying you have to be totally
Yeah.
calm to do divination because that would kind of like take away some of its like maximal utility for me anyway.
Hmm.
But it's like you
Hmm.
really have to at least I feel like I have to at least access a space of like some degree of groundedness and like connection with spirit. Otherwise, it's just gonna be like just like fucky. Um,
Right.
so I don't see that necessarily as just being like calm because I don't think calm is the same thing as spiritual alignment. I think we can be in spiritual alignment and be under duress and in crisis. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because crisis
Hmm.
doesn't mean you're out of alignment with spirit. I don't believe that. That hasn't been my experience. But you do
Yeah,
have to
totally.
like, you have to lock in.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
and
that.
yeah, go ahead if you're gonna say something.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's definitely true. And I feel like there's an element of like horary. It's like if you're doing tarot and you only have 7 cards, that gives you a lot to read into. Right?
So true.
Whereas, 78, that's like a lot. That's the each of the symbols is a lot clearer. And that's one of the things about horary that I think is can be a bit of a challenge is that the symbols are huge. Like, we're dividing everything into a pattern of 7.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a lot that gives you a lot that you can read into if you're feeling like not in a sort of stable, spiritually aligned place, I guess.
So true. Yeah. That's so true. It's really like interpretive. Please perceive this Apollonian
What?
ass like bottle plug that Eric gave me.
That's incredible. I did
Isn't that
not
fun?
think of a wine plug at first. I was like, but yes, wine plug.
No, it has a chip on it. It's not suitable for
Yeah.
any for any other purposes. I just love how like this the light like shines through it. So like I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just giving
beautiful.
my oracular daddy. Um, Shout out to Apollo. Okay, well, yeah, if you enjoyed this, please hype it up on socials because I'm gonna save the video and let it exist in perpetuity. And I don't really intend to do a ton of advertising because kind of the point of this is to just have like a fun way to like hang out with my friends and to make like fun, easy content that reaches out to people and like teaches maybe, and it's also just like a fun place to hang out. And I don't really want that to like turn into work for me. So my kind of policy right now is that I'm not gonna hype it that much.
I think that's
But
great.
yeah, it's supposed to be fun. So if you enjoyed it, please just give it a little shout out. That would be helpful for me. Is there anything you want to just like say, Truly? Like, I
This was
think
super fun.
everyone should go to Shuly's website, shulyrose.com, and look at the project that she's doing on the lunar mansions because it's so fucking brilliant. I talked about it at the beginning, but it's honestly like such a fucking serve. Hang on, I have to share it. I have to share for a second just to like see. Okay.
I appreciate
We're
you.
talking about your work now. Okay, this is Shuly's website. It's so fucking
Oh,
pretty. Okay. This is the project that she's doing right now that I'm so fucking into. First of all, like it's basically Shuly did this like long form gnosis project with each of the 28 lunar mansions. So fucking cool. Each of her articles is like well researched and also like really balanced with the gnosis arm, like the actual like doing like deity work and stuff arm of that, but it's just like so rooted in um it's like super well cited and just like yeah, beautiful.
wow, I
Oh hey.
appreciate you. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
The project's been a lot of fun, honestly. I feel like I'm my whole engagement with astrology is exactly what you were describing for this YouTube channel of just like I just want to have fun.
Yeah.
I have this is spiritually fulfilling. Like I'm not doing any promotion bullshit. Like just this is what my heart wants me to do right now. I'm
Hell yeah.
really proud of that annotated bibliography. Like
It's so sick. Like I love this so much. It's just so smart. Like if you see me offhandedly referring to an author anywhere in my work, like Albertini says the stations 26 27 are often confused for handles, and actually they refer to spouts the water is poured from. First of all, what a fun fact. Anyway, it's like this is where you should look for that. Like that's such a good idea, honestly. I think, especially if you're the kind of person who like references the same sources again and again. I fucking love that. So here's that. This is sick. And if you want to just be able to deep dive into the like historical meat, historical juice of this shit, like you've just made it like so fucking easy to do that.
yeah, that's my thing. I'm like, I feel like
Oh
this
hey,
all of this
it's
is
our
really
flame war
cool and
queen.
that's my boy. Yeah, I feel like the all the lunar station stuff is it could be so fun and exciting, but it's impenetrable if you don't speak like 3 classical languages and have hours of time to build a giant library. And so I'm like, let's, I don't know, make this a little
Let's get in
more
there.
Yeah, like I want people at the table. I need friends to talk to.
Honestly, I love that as a motivation for doing like intensive work vis-a-vis astrology. It's just Eric says we value citation in this house. It's true. That's what drew me to you in the first place, Eric. Is your rigorous citational practice.
Yes.
Um, yeah, because Auntie says that they're gonna put this that they're gonna put it in their pamphlet wherein they're
Let's
flaming
fucking
us,
go.
I assume. You're gonna flame us, you're gonna tell us to look at the video, and we're gonna be like, look at this lunar missions. That'll be the whole pamphlet. It'll be very confusing to your reader base. Anyway, I think that's a great motivation to for like what you're the work you're doing in astrology is to just be like, yeah, like I'm actually just trying to like I want you to know about this so that we can get excited about it and then we can like hang out. Like that's so sick. Eric
The
says that
Sagittarian way.
you can talk to him about nerdy astrology stuff.
Okay, okay, hell yeah.
Yeah, I think he's very
I'm gonna
available
fire
for
up the
the kind
messages
of
app.
convos that you're trying to have. Honestly, I've thought about that more than once.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Let's fucking go on that note. Great talking.
This has been so fun.